How do FaZe have no options? What happened? The world's upside down.
They don't have that much money. That's why.
Do you want to hear an interesting concept for FaZe?
Yeah, hit me.
Affordable, inform, off the radar,
All right.
European,
Keep going.
Opper, Halzerk.
I don't hate it.
Sell in-game items at the best prices in just a couple of clicks. We are the biggest instant sell service for in-game items like Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and Rust. Easy selling process and instant withdrawal of funds to the most popular payment methods. More than 140,000 deals and 50,000 active sellers every month. Use promo code HLTV5 and get a 5% bonus on the sale of your skins. Skin Place. Sell items now.
When every move counts, your chair shouldn't hold you back. Top esports players are switching to Anthros for unbeatable support and performance that keeps them in the game longer. Designed to support your unique shape and built with medical-grade components, Anthros is setting a new standard for comfort. Check out the Anthros difference today and get ready to fix your sit, because gaming deserves more than just a chair.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Counter-Strike fans across the globe, welcome to HLTV Confirmed Not Live. It's a special edition. We've never done a Not Live before. Brought to you by our lovely sponsor, Skin Place. If you want to sell some skins, head over to Skin Place. And of course, Anthros. My chair arrived. I came home. Big boxes sitting for me in the hallway, and I spent yesterday putting it together. So I've fixed my sit to do this episode. So this is nice. I can sit here all day, gentlemen. I didn't even know it came with a footrest, and I can't stop playing with the footrest. Did yours come with a footrest?
Yeah, it did. I didn't really use it.
Oh. Get it out of the box.
I should.
Put your feet on something.
I've never used a footrest. Those on the airplanes, I hate that.
No, this isn't that.
But this is different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Striker, are you using it?
I have it on top of my other footrest, so sometimes I use it.
You got a footrest on a footrest. So yeah. I guess one for each foot could be happening. Now, look, just a quick notice for the people who are watching. Yeah, we didn't do a live episode. We've got both of our producers, Lucas and Dimitri. They aren't home at the moment, and we didn't really want to have to transplant them somewhere else to be able to do an episode. So we're pre-recording this. It is 1 p.m. on, what day is it? Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Well, how is it Wednesday already? How is it Wednesday already?
It's because we leave the States so late, mate. You know, when we left the US, was your flight in the afternoon?
Yeah, 6 p.m.
Yeah, so there you go. So you're not landing until like fucking 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 the next day.
Yeah, right.
And then you have a connection.
I had 8
hours. At 8 p.m.
Yeah, I had an 8-hour connection.
Well, what the? Okay.
8-hour connection. Where?
8-hour connection in Amsterdam.
Oh, it could be worse. Did you?
Just went to the lounge and.
But you didn't leave the airport for 8 hours.
Bro, I was so tired that I couldn't do anything.
Oh my god!
I went to the lounge and I worked.
Ah, it's even worse. You're one of those people. I have my laptop with me at all times, but I never use it. Striker, did you have a long layover?
No, like an hour. We were actually afraid that we would miss it. It was fine.
See, you had the best side of things. You didn't miss it, and then you would have got home nice and quickly. I had a 5-hour layover, and that was in Frankfurt Airport. And Alex and I, at that point, we were just like, because we had done like 5 weeks, right? So we did Dallas, and then we went to Michigan and stuff, and then we did 3 weeks. And we're just like, can we just be like, I said I'd give a toe to teleport. He said he'd give a few. I don't think he really weighed it up how a few toes. A few toes is not worth like 5 hours, but one, I reckon like one toe for a few hours, or even just part of a toe, I think would have been a fair trade-off to get home quickly. But we didn't get lucky with that, so there was no going home. Someone's washing's just finished.
Yeah, that's mine.
I was like, oh, okay.
Bro's already on the washing. Bro's on the washing already.
It's not me, by the way. I'll just give credit to my girlfriend.
I insta unpacked. I'm on load 3 of laundry right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I just needed something to do, to be honest, because I was on I barely slept on the plane, so I was on 30 hours straight at that point, and it was just I just need something. I need something to do.
Well,
I ended up playing 3 games at night just to keep myself.
No, aren't you practicing for a LAN?
Yeah, I am actually.
Oh, okay.
Kind of. Yeah.
Nice.
It's going interestingly because I haven't played for properly for years, and it's you.
When is it?
In 2 weeks. The weekend after this.
Okay.
You got heaps of time to get ready. That's all right. That's
2
a
weeks,
good on-ramp.
2 weeks practice for a lad. Let's go.
Yeah, but a deathmatch every day and a couple of pugs, and then you're good.
I mean, I think the most important thing is that you don't feel exhausted after all the practice and arrive there in suboptimal form. So,
they were on my plane. The liquid bunch are on my plane.
Oh, okay.
Shui was on there, Nertz was on there, Twist and Kara were on there. Who else was on my? Bircho in business. I don't know. You're paying him too much.
Oh, yeah.
You're paying him too much. He was in business. I was like, okay, I see what's going on here.
It was a points upgrade. He was talking about this for a month because he tried to use it. This is our photographer, obviously, for those that don't know. He was, he had to make a call because all of these points things are kind of a scam, to be honest.
Fair.
So it's oh, you want to upgrade? Oh, you need to call this number. Then they put you on a list. And then at some point, they tell you
right
maybe you got
list.
it. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, flights are on now, so he's not a son of dog.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So then he just posted a photo in business. It was goated.
Yeah. So Alex was across on the opposite side from me. Bircho was one of the last seats. The liquid guys were there. Someone from MOUZ, the sports guy. I forget his name. Fuck, sorry, dude. You know who was on the plane though? Who was not in business class?
Mezii was not in business class.
Mr. Merriman was on the plane in economy, and I'm like, mate, you didn't upgrade. He's like, oh, I didn't think about it. And then I came, and there wasn't any seats left, and I'm like, you just won the major, and now you're sitting in economy the whole way home. But at least that he can rest his head on that, the fact that he had just won the major, so that would have been all right for him to get.
Put it in
through.
the baby fund. Honestly, it's kind of I feel it in some ways. It's just you're putting it for the next generations.
I keep always trying to talk Harry into doing it. I'm like, Harry, just upgrade. And he's like, yeah, but I got the wife and the kid. And, I'm like, well, just get rid of one of the 7 dogs, mate. I'm sure you can
the
afford
27
it.
dogs, yeah.
Or the kid,
Yeah, well, that one too. But I don't think that one goes down so well when I suggest giving up the children. All right, look, let's get into things, right? Because I've got an itinerary for today, speaking of travel. So this is what I want to hit. And then you guys can either tell me if I'm being a little bit audacious or maybe I need to add a couple of topics here. So we're going to wrap up the major, from dupreeh's retirement to Vitality's win, and then what's next for Simple. So we're going to try to cover the full spectrum in the playoffs, all of that, and the other storylines that popped up throughout the major. A kind of a full wrap. So I think we go broad and then we start to narrow in. And as we know, the children yearn for the mines, boys. The children yearn for the mines. And just like them, we've got the trolls who yearn for the rumor mill, and things are kicking off out there already. So we're going to have to hit on a bunch of those topics, get the spotlight, put it in Striker's face, say, what have you heard? Tell us what you know, and see if we're able to get a couple of roster nuggets coming out there. Now, these are topics that I think people would want us to talk about, but I don't think we're going to have time to talk about. And I would still like to just let people know that we'll probably talk about them in the off season, in episodes that are coming up. So those ones, because while I was traveling, I was writing down what I wanted to do for this episode, what I think I want to do for other episodes coming up. So obviously format talk's a big one. There was a lot of conversation about best of 1, best of 5 still. So we can hit a dream major format in the future. And because we already dived into a bit of that in an earlier episode, we spoke about some stuff there. So I'd like to jump into that in the break.
We did some Valve talks, I guess you did as well. So we have some insight on that and some lack of it. Didn't actually talk about the best of 5s. I don't think we ever spoke about that.
No, I don't think we brought
but
that
I think
up
a lot of people did, so we can kind of glean from that.
Yeah, I did. What else have we got? The VRS season in reflection. So I want to jump into that and kind of take a look at what things popped up that we didn't expect. How did it go from positions that we did expect? It's going to be a lot of the same issues that we know prevailing right now, but that's regardless. A comprehensive season wrap. So going over all the ups and downs, maybe some of the biggest roster changes or biggest fouls, but take a look at that from that angle and
revisit
then
the little box.
The predictions, time capsule.
Time capsule, yeah.
Yeah, and then finally going into next season, that's when we can, look at all the roster changes that have happened, take a look at, okay, what updates have happened to the VRS that will affect their seasons that didn't affect last. And those are kind of the topics that are not for today, but will be for the future of the break over the next couple of weeks. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. Like I'm doing some work. It's really nice. Okay, so I think we should start with the live show because that was the last show we did, which was really, really fun. It was great to have everybody turn out and everybody was extremely interactive, which is, Prof, that was kind of the brief that you gave me. You said you wanted it to be close to Paris, which was the last Blast Major as well, and you really liked that one. So did it meet your expectations?
I think so. I think we did it as good, if not better. I would say I think we did it slightly better, but also the audience was just insane. So I think that made it easier because, like, even in Paris, we had some guests, and we had SDY and had some like funny moments where we prepared some stuff for him. It was like this or that or whatever, some pictures behind him going on. Like we didn't have stuff like that because unfortunately getting players was impossible. But I think the audience just like made up for the lack of that, and honestly showed that maybe we don't even need players. Sometimes we can just do stuff that is fun, and that's it. Obviously, a player or two is nice. Not saying anything regarding that, but ultimately it's just about having getting all of these people together in one room and having fun, which we did, and also just seeing like what 350 people is in person.
Sure.
It's quite impressive. It's quite a lot of people.
Yeah.
And caught us off guard in the whole like getting people in on time with tank tops, picking sizes and everything. It was a bit delayed, but it worked out in the end.
For sure. I think that just on the guest one, I've mentioned it. I think I mentioned it on Talking Counter because I knew that people also there when we're at events, Jason and I try and grab a guest or whatever, grab a player, like same type of thing in a different environment. And I mentioned it regarding HLTV Confirmed 2 and the live version. And I just said that during the major, it's really hard to get players, especially when you're dealing with teams who are all in pursuit of that same goal, right? And you don't want to unravel their focus because we asked. That's the thing. We asked. And a lot of them say no, which is fine. I would say no too. I'm focusing on winning the major. Can you guys keep your little fucking talk show to yourself? It's like, I get it, right? I definitely get it. So it's one of those things where in the past we had Copenhagen Flames and it's like, hey, do you guys want to come on the show? And they're like, fuck yeah. Because for them, it's, they're making a dent. They've already made a splash and it's like, yeah, okay, like cool, we'll come. But otherwise it's quite difficult. And then also getting some local guests in or whatever. A lot of the North American, let's say ex-players who are now either like turn an influencer or a streamer or just a figure. A lot of those guys don't do things unless they're getting paid. And when I say getting paid, I don't mean getting paid a little bit of money. I mean getting paid like a lot of money. So it's also hard to get them to be
and most of them
too.
Arrived Saturday, Sunday, just for the show match or whatever that they're playing. So unfortunately, none of that really worked out. There was a bunch of plans. I know there was a plan to have like a NA co-stream thing going on with like Skadoodle and Automatic and Nothing or whatever, and that was supposed to go on for a while, but didn't happen in the end. So in that case, that would be like someone that we'd love to have on, but they also have their own lives. Nothing has kids too, I think, right now.
Yep.
I'm not sure. So you don't really want to spend 5 days away if you can spend 2, essentially.
For sure. Yeah, but either way, I think the sentiment that you brought out there about the people in the crowd, it was great. Everybody played along, and I think that was great. Like
we got a feedback forum going on, and it was funny. There's I think 30 people answered it, and 29 were like, "Yeah, I'd come back again." One guy was like, "Maybe," and then the reason was like Moses talked too much shit about NA, so
he's meant to be the spearhead, mate. He was bringing him down. He was throwing out controversial takes.
He was all the controversial takes on every topic possible.
They made it easy.
He still ended up as the crowd favorite in the end. He still won them over somehow. I don't know what happened.
Well, we were going to start and he was late, but the thing that he missed was everybody chanting his name because I was doing a little game before the show kicked off with everybody and we're doing like the NA Go in-game leader, we're doing maps and Jason popped up. We rigged the draw a bit there and everyone started... He beat quite a few people. I think Stewie was the man that dethroned him as the NA.
He beat Shroud for sure.
Yeah.
Shroud was not a crowd favorite at all.
Tarek either. They didn't like some of these turncoats. So
seems like the fans know ball. That's all I'm gonna say.
The hardcore. So a big shout out to everybody who came. And I know a lot of those people I saw across the weekend as well throughout the venues and stuff. Which was cool. So yeah, big thank you to everybody who rocked up.
Just to wrap that up, it's been insane. Like I've never been stopped more than at this event. You can obviously see that like a lot of the audience of the podcast itself is from NA, and just like mainly English speaking. It is obviously English speaking podcast, so that's where the audience is going to be. But it was quite insane, especially once you get stopped and people just continue, coming up to you. But the best moment was when me and Striker rolled up. I don't know if it's the last day or the next to last day. Literally walked up. We're standing like near the first elevators to go down, and a dude rocks up, looks at Striker. I'm standing next to Striker. He looks at Striker and says, "Are you prof?"
Ah, it's too good. The jokes write themselves, don't they?
It was
too good.
It was a goated moment.
Did you say yes?
No. It was the guy ended up so embarrassed. He's
Should have
like,
played
oh my
along
God,
with
that's
that.
that's so embarrassing. It would be so funny actually if we had played it. We'd be like, that's Striker.
I should have played along with it.
it
Have a bit
happens.
of trolling
It
out
happens.
there.
It happens.
But this is nice because it segues in quite perfectly into looking now at the major overall, right? Because I want to go quite broad. I was thinking maybe we could give it like a rating or whatever, but maybe we just talk generally because we're going to get stuck in each team, and I have a couple of storylines as well that I want to get into. But I don't want to load the deck here, so I don't want to say too much. I kind of want you guys to give your impressions of everything. But I think for me, the crowd was a huge one. Right, I think as far as majors go and crowds and everything like that, this one definitely brought the required energy. Right, it was great from day dot until the finish, even without any real North American representation other than FaZe with the Liege, and they got knocked out within the quarterfinals. But the energy was pretty good the entire time. I think the crowd was a very respectful crowd too. I didn't feel like, guys, do you remember seeing threads of people being like, "The crowd's fucking cheating, man! They're giving everything away"? I didn't see one of those.
I mean, not a single like crowd X sucks for X reason.
No.
It was pretty good. It was pretty good.
So overall,
it was
for the
also
major,
so
it was
loud
fucking
that
great.
like most of the time it was so loud that no matter what would happen in the game, you would just not know what happened, like
True.
what's about to happen and all that stuff. So I think that probably helped.
Yeah, I think overall, like the major for me was from a consumer perspective really strong. I don't know like where it would rate in terms of all-time majors or whatever, and obviously there's some factors that play into that in terms of like bracket and teams and all of those things. But in general, like the event that Blast put on, the live production that was there, and the crowd that showed up and took part in it, I think that it was really strong. So I think for this major, people aren't having an awful lot to complain about. Really, there are things because we always have stuff to complain about, and we'll get to those. But Striker, how do you feel overall? Someone who was boots on the ground. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it was great. Crowd-wise, it was amazing, of course. I mean, I was so hoping for FaZe to make the whole run, at least into the final, because that would, like, viewership-wise and crowd-wise and all that stuff. Honestly, like, Bricho said it, I think, on one of the days, like, when FaZe either, I think, when they raised up onto the stage or something like that, like,
that could have been
the
Thursday
noise that came out was, like, on the level of FURIA winning the quarterfinal in Rio, like that. It was insane, like such a barrage on senses, And so if that had gone on to the final, like that would have been the one way that this major, the playoffs would have been improved in terms of like the experience, because there would be a massive crowd favorite, and that's always like super exciting, Of course, like when you have like this whole storyline that like turned up with "fuck you Apex" and the whole time, like every time they were chanting against them, regardless of who they were playing. And then we actually got, I mean, not lucky, but like we got actually MongolZ who did have a lot of support anyway in America for whatever reason. I don't even know why they suddenly adopted a Mongolian team, just if it's the underdog story or whatever it is. But like the crowd was there every single game. It's not like some of these playoffs that we've had where the crowd only cares about a couple of teams or like all the big teams, but even the lower part of the bracket got a lot of love. MOUZ got
the
a lot
weakest
of love.
was FURIA Pain. And which was probably understandable because in terms of even the quality of the game, that was probably one of the more questionable matches.
Yeah,
but
sure. Probably, yeah. We got rid of that very quickly, Then we had MongolZ take on Pain, and like again, they had a lot of support, so that helped out. MOUZ, they never really get too much support, but somehow when they play against Vitality, that's when they do. So that was kind of fun. So yeah, I mean, the experience was great. As Prof said, also got stopped loads of times. Like the only place I ever get stopped like kind of regularly is Katowice, and that's probably because there's a lot of Czech people there, so it's just that's the one place that I get recognized more or less, and it happened a lot over in Austin, which was fun. Even like at the airport, like five people came up and like took pictures with me and stuff, which just never happens to me, which is just, it's really fun.
Yeah, it's a different experience with the fan interaction there, which I think is cool. Like Alex and I, after we finished casting our game on the Saturday night, fans were just waiting outside there, and we were there until security kicked us out. And they all wanted to go home. I get it. But they came and kicked us out, and like me and Alex weren't going to leave. We waited until they were like, okay, like we're taking you with us now, and I'm like, fine, all right, that's cool. And then I made some tweets about this, but we also went out there on the Sunday because Alex and I didn't have to do the show match, and we didn't have to obviously do the final. So we were like, okay, we got a whole day off, which is great. You get to go around, you get to actually watch the event. It's nice to go and talk to the devs for a day and just be a bit more chill. So we're like, well, let's go while the show match is on. Let's go and just see if we can find people and have a chat. And I made some tweets about it, and we were going to go to the Liquid booth, but we walked past the Liquid booth, and I didn't realize it was the Liquid booth. And I was like, and then we found ourselves in the middle of nowhere near some fucking chicken shop, and we got stuck there. Like we couldn't move because like a queue just formed. And I was like, this is very polite. Right? You weren't just mobbed, like it's a queue that just formed. So I was like, all right, awesome. So we're just in the middle of nowhere, and then because the show was about to start, for the final, then security came up to us and they're like, yeah, Blast said you guys have to shut this down. And I'm like, mate, what do you want me to do? Like, I can't, I'm not going to leave. Like, you can go and tell them that they have to go inside, but it's not fucking up to me. So I was like, me and Alex just stayed there, and then the talent manager ended up coming and everything, and they're like, no, you guys have to go because they want people inside. So I was like, fine. So I said, sorry, everybody. This line was still fucking huge, man. I was like, I couldn't believe the amount of people who were queuing just to take photos with me and Alex. They're like, we're just a bunch of idiots. Like, so it was really quite. It was a different feeling.
I saw one day Jason Lake was like doing like a little meet and greet thing, and it was like between maps. So I don't know how many of those people were actually there to see him. But I also saw like a pretty big queue that seemed to be leading to him, which was like probably hundreds of people, to be honest, like in just like this little hallway, like so on the concourse. So it's the crowd was something else. Really do want, just for that reason, I kind of do want a few more North American events on the calendar. Now we constantly get at least like one of the IEMs, and then like obviously now we only got one more major. But yeah, if we had like one per season, that would be kind of great. I think that works out if you have the right place for it. So it was cool.
Well, obviously for a major, right, it's different. Like people are coming in from everywhere. I've met a lot of people from Canada who are flying down to be part of the event and stuff. And there's people coming from all over the world, actually. I met Lim, the guy who does the POVs that I like watching on YouTube. He was there and he was in the queue. And I was like, bro, what are you doing queuing up for this? Like, you're the guy making the VODs. I had a chat with him, and there was just a whole lot of people, like people who are in the Talking Counter Discord or HLTV Confirmed fans. It's funny when you hear people like, oh, I listen to the podcast, and they like that more than like the casting. It's like, yeah, that's sick, right? Because people listen to this as, while they're working out or on the way to work or whatever. Yeah. So it's really cool. It's a different environment from that perspective. And I think a North American major, it'd be nice to have it like, I wouldn't set an amount of time, but we don't have it for the next 3. I can tell you that much, right? So with the next North American major can't be until 2027 at a minimum. It'd be cool to be in Vancouver or something like that. Give Canada a go, see what they can pull off up there.
Toronto.
Yeah, why not? Anyway,
the issue with that is like we never really had an arena event to happen there. So like, what's the turnout going to be like?
I think it'd be good.
Know. I guess so. I guess we would still have American people coming over and all that, so that would probably work out.
Yeah, I think so. Prof, okay, what's your general rating or takeaway or feels of the major?
Of the major, I think it was great, honestly. As you said, there's not much you can complain about or anything bad you can say. I think maybe to start with the negatives, on quotation mark, is simply the maybe lack of some more iconic moments in the playoffs themselves or matches. I think we had some good games. Spirit MOUZ was really good. That
was the game of the playoffs, really.
To start it off, right? And when you get that as your first game, you can't be too sad about the playoffs because like we had probably major playoffs without a single game of that like quality and intensity and everything. So that was really good, but then when you think about the rest, it was some nice moments, but I don't think you had, when you think about the FaZe Spirit or even the FaZe G2 from Shanghai, for example, both really, really cool games. I think that's kind of what we lacked, but that's nothing that G2, nothing that Blast can do anything about.
Or G2, really.
Or G2 for sure. Yeah, G2 definitely couldn't do anything about that this time around. So that's that. But I think like the group stage was great. Yes, I think having having audience for like at least a part of the group stage is something where we should be moving. Just considering how the playoff is just sold out, right? So there is more desire for audience to be involved in games in general, and also the ability just to see more teams and also put a different kind of pressure, kind of like we did in Shanghai, I think for the last stage. The last stages was pretty cool. And not every country can serve that. I think considering how the playoffs went, probably the US could as well. At least
depends on how many people. If you do 500 people, maybe. Yeah.
But I guess that's kind of a detail to figure out. But like the way the group stage was set up was great. Still, I think it provided a lot of fun, because obviously if you're playing on a stage, you don't get the same interactions, all the BM, the Lear, the Apex going off, and all of these things that we got a lot of. So I think the group stage also, just like the Falcons elimination, was such a huge storyline in itself that made the early stages of the tournament, which is something that I was kind of scared that they'll be kind of boring.
Repetitive was something that you were pointing
turned
out.
Okay.
Yep.
Because we had these like stories like Lin Vision, right, and Tai Lu going from the first stages, advancing, Lin Vision especially, going all the way to stage 3. I think these are the things that worked out quite okay. And of course, then the FaZe story also coming from stage 2 to stage 3, and then playoffs of simple. It gave us enough to be excited about. So yeah, I think all together, like really well put together event. There are some like smaller details about like how the show ran and whatever that we can nitpick, but I don't think that's like, in terms of comparing it to other majors, I don't think that's a relevant like anything to have
detract from the overall
experience. Exactly. Yeah. So I think it was a great put together major. No drama, no bullshit. No, as you said, no complaining about the crowd. The crowd was there throughout the event. I think maybe the Pain MongolZ game was like the least people in the audience during that, but I'm not sure. You were casting that, right?
I think it was fine. I think the crowd was definitely going for MongolZ.
But there were still enough people to be like, this is, we had games with way less people during majors in the past. So
for sure.
I think overall, like, just great event. Great event. Nothing more to
rates
add.
Generally pretty highly, right? It's hard to find a lot of negatives to look at. In terms of one of the moments we had during the playoffs, and this isn't one that was in the server, this is someone who's now taken themselves out of the server. We had dupreeh announce his retirement. So last Blast Major, we had Kenny announce his retirement, and this time around we've had dupreeh. And obviously dupreeh, 5-time major winner, only man to have 5 of those in the cabinet, part of the greatest Counter-Strike team to ever do it of Australis, right? This is for people who aren't familiar with Peter. And then in the last, 6 months, he's been doing some analyst test stuff, right? So he's a family man now. He's only early 30s. He's only 32 years of age. But he's a family man now, got some kids, got a wife. And I guess, in terms of having to get back in the server and rebuild, the options would probably be something where he's starting grassroots with Denmark or a Danish team. So you can understand why a man who's been doing it on the biggest of stages and part of the legacy of Australis probably is going to have a hard time being able to justify putting in all that when you do have the family and everything going on. So I wanted to bring this one up, obviously, so we can, just quickly give him his flowers. I don't think we have to spend too much time talking about this, but if you're a player who was part of the greatest Counter-Strike team of all time, and now you've announced your retirement, then you definitely deserve some respect, right? So what do we do? Do we do like a moment of silence? That's normally when people die. No. He hasn't really died, so we don't.
That's what I did. Like, I came up to him at the after party, right? And I'm like, "What do you say in this situation?" You're like, "Do I go commiserations? Do I go congratulations? Like, what's the deal here?" And he was like, "Yeah, it was a big decision. Congratulations, I think, is in order." So I think that's how it goes.
Yeah, the thing is, with congratulations, it sounds like, oh, you congratulate me and then I'm no longer in the server. It's like congratulating you on the good career, right?
Yeah, so that's amazing. Everything that you accomplished, right?
Yeah, and I had this conversation not with Peter, but with a bunch of other players at the event, like talking about the teams that they're in, or maybe what they want to do with their future and stuff. And with them, when they were chatting, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, well, when you retired," da, da, da. I'm like, "Well, it's not the same when I retired." First of all, like if the players I'm talking about who are talking about this stuff are much better Counter-Strike players than I ever was, but they also have a perspective where they could go to other teams and they're younger men and they weren't an in-game leader from a region who only had one team. And I was like, "Listen, if you're thinking about quitting, the one thing that you'll never like once you're off, it's hard to get back on. Like, there's plenty of other players that you've seen quit who can't really get back on the circuit, can't really get back on a team." But the reason that I bring that up is the thing that you're not going to miss being in the server for 10 hours a day, practicing, traveling around the world, doing all those things, right? Like the thing that you are going to miss is the feeling of competing, like walking out there on that stage or getting in the server in a close match of Counter-Strike and winning in overtime or winning 13-11, winning a massive clutch. Like that competitive feeling is the one that you won't have anymore. And you're not going to get the same thing from playing fucking FaZe on a stream if you're being a content creator or something, right? Like you're never going to get that feeling again. So if you're thinking about getting out of the server, you better be damn sure, because as soon as you're out, like it's very hard to get back in. And yeah, you feel a bit, life is a little bit more boring. Like the only way that I can get a similar feeling to competing, even though again, I understand I was a fucking bot. Like people always hate it when I reference shit from my career, but fuck none of you gut careers. Jumping out of an airplane, right? Or like bungee jumping. That's like the same level of like adrenaline that I would feel when you would be competing. And those things are hard to get. So I've gone on a bit of a tangent away from Peter. But yeah, I did speak to quite a few players who were like thinking about quitting, and I was like, "What are you doing? Like, what do you mean you're quitting? Like, you can't be thinking about that. You got to be staying in the server." So, yeah, shout out to dupreeh one time, who's
amazing player, is an amazing guy in general. I think overall, like,
nice man.
Just I wouldn't say that we're friends or anything close to that. But anytime you're around him, he's just a chill dude. He's just a chill dude. And you can appreciate that, and you can also see, like, you can say whatever you want about any player, but having a good attitude with being a good player, it definitely helps having success. Not individually, maybe, but as a team. Like, you need people that are like that. And I think he always brought that to the server and like to the environment that he's in, and he's bringing it now to the desk as well. I think just enjoyable guy to listen to. But yeah, amazing career. You can obviously 5 majors. No one has that. His longevity and having that success. I think whatever you want to say in Vitality, maybe he wasn't always the best player, most influential player, but obviously he did bring something. He
played a part. Yeah,
he played a part there. So it's great. I really don't think there was anything left for him to do as a competitor. Like, there's really, what is the point of putting in all of this effort when you have accomplished pretty much everything, right?
Sure.
Like, only what would be left is to like reinvent yourself as an IGL, and that's something that he multiple times said he's not really keen on, and it's not really his vibe, right? So move on and find new joys in life. I think that's a good thing.
Well, if we get him more on the analyst desk to hear from him more, we
did record some content with him.
Okay, nice.
In Austin, including career and pictures. People saw maybe Pasha, and I don't know if we posted another one of those, but it's going to be a banger from all that I know.
Nice. All right, cool. We'll look forward to that coming out. All right. There's a few more, they're not headlines, but things that were talked about around the major that I wanted to bring up and just get our general opinions on. One of them was, there was quite a bit of a conversation regarding post-map interviews that you guys may have caught there. So if people didn't, during the major, what would happen is Blast in their TPA had it so that each team had to give post-map interviews on the stage with either stunner or shocks once the game had come to its conclusion. And I saw a bit of like pushback from different people within the community, whether it be like an analyst, a coach, or players. There was Reddit threads about it as well. There was HLTV threads about it as well. And I'm curious because, Striker, I know that you like the Formula One. You like the cars that go around the track. They go zoom, very fast. And I imagine they're not giving post-lap interviews. That would be crazy. But you're
in the box. Just a quick comment here. What did you think about those tires?
You're a consumer, though, of some traditional sports. Or it's not really a traditional sport, is it? It's fucking cars. That's
not exactly. I mean, but like I watched hockey and stuff like that, and that's a little bit more.
in that direction.
to what we do, at least you have thirds and all that stuff, so like there's space for that. They do that there, by the way. Yeah.
So what did you make of it? Because there was people who weren't too happy. The people's complaints were, right, it doesn't feel appropriate, or it doesn't feel like we're getting any value out of it. The players just want to be with their team to talk about the next one. So what was your takeaway?
I agree with the value part. I think I didn't hear a single one that actually told me something I wanted to know, that I got any insight out of. So I just feel like they're just not generally likely to say anything interesting either before or during a game. Maybe after, when you have some conclusion, you get a little bit more of an insight or some emotion, right? That tells you something about like what the mental state is inside the team. But you can't really. They were very appropriate, on the stage, and like especially when you bring them out in front of the crowd, they're not gonna be very, very sharing in that atmosphere anyway. So like if you want to do something like this, like the ones that I fucking hated the walkaway ones, but if you had a coach on, then maybe you can ask him about like, okay, what's the team talk going to be like just right at this moment, what are you going to be focusing on for the next thing? But for a player, you're just not going to get anything that's actually going to tell you something about what's going on inside the team, or like what's like how do you get the team to forget about this map or whatever it is, So I agreed with a lot of the points that people are making. I just think it was just made just so we have a little something else going on as well, like that we've never seen before, but it didn't really work.
What did you think, Prof?
Yeah, I mean, obviously being in the arena and being around the event, I wasn't like super glued in on what's going on the stream. And even if you are in the arena, most of the time you can't really understand what people are saying in these interviews.
It's hard depending on where you are.
Like if you're positioned perfectly, you can, but if you're like somewhere like near the stage, usually it's just going to be like very muddy. I think that would be the word. But I think like appropriate, I think is maybe a silly way to put it. Like,
okay,
what is appropriate, inappropriate? Like, bro, you're asking a question. No one is asking you what you fucking, did last night. I think it's appropriate to ask how the game went or whatever. But what kind of agree with Striker that I didn't really hear anything or saw any clips of any of these comments being interesting. So that could be a combination of the setting, the questions, the players. But I also think like it makes more sense to ask a coach in this situation than a player, but also just trying
people want to hear from the players though. That's the problem, right? So you can understand why they go the player.
I'm down to experiment with it a bit more, give it a bit more time. I'm not opposed to that, but yeah, I really don't understand the whole like community's need to defend players on these things. Like if there's someone that wanted to defend them, it'd be their orgs when they signed.
I think they were also within their rights though, just to say no. Like even though they have it in the agreement, I think if they were after the match and they didn't want to do it, they could say nah, and then it would just be up to Shox or Stunner to say, try to grab a word with these guys, but they didn't want to, or you just don't show anything, right? Like I think that also says something. If a team lost like a really crushing close map and you put the microphone in their face and they just walk away, it's like you're going to put a microphone in Magic's face after he lost a map. What are you going to expect him to say?
Yeah.
That guy doesn't say anything even when it's a good win. It's like you need to ask Boros like a really good in-depth question, and you need to have him in a good setting. Everything needs to be really nice,
question,
right? Or a trolly question, right? So it's tough, right? Because some of them, you talk to Techno, Techno's a straight shooter. Right? He's always going to give you like the most straight answer that you would ever be expecting in your life, right? So it's going to be hit, it's going to be miss. Personally, I don't think it added anything, which to me is why I'm like, well, then what's the point? Because if it's not adding anything, then just let the player go and start talking with their team.
I mean, one way to do it would be like, obviously, again, like as you say, people want to hear from the players, and especially like people inside. I'm sure it was mainly for the people inside the arena rather than like to have anything too interesting on the broadcast or whatever. But like one way to get a bit more out of it would be like, let's say MOUZ play, right? And you ask Zipex about like what he thought about that map and like what the preparation was like, or maybe they didn't follow the plan, whatever it was, like you get some additional people like from behind the team to talk about it. If it's not the straight the coach, then by somebody who is not like under the intense pressure of that moment, and like they're not going to be so uptight about like answering any of these questions, right? Like if it's a team manager, maybe like team managers obviously are not necessarily part of the like the process or whatever it is, like before or between matches, but like could be something like that, you know, like some additional staff behind the team that actually has like a little bit of a bit more of an insight.
I'm not going to talk about this from an expert perspective because I don't know if what I'm saying is going to be true, but I'm sure there'll be people in our comments who also watch TI with Dota, and I'm pretty sure what they do is once the draft is done, then they do an interview with a coach or an assistant coach, and they're talking about them about the draft, you know, and then that's just before the game goes in. You could do the same thing about the veto. You could do the same thing like after Mat 1 with somebody that isn't a player and a member of staff there. So,
but I mean, we do that, right? I mean, those interviews take place after the veto is done, you know, but they just generally don't really talk about it a lot of the time unless there's like some particular interesting part of it, you know, like there's very few questions around it, you know, before the game.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was just one that I saw. Sorry, Prof. What do you want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think we could give it one more shot because I think there's different approaches that we can use to see how it rolls out, right? Because it's really also, as you said, depends on some of the players that you get. If you get like a spirit in general, very hard. MongolZ, very hard to get anything out of, you know, and then the environment. And also it's a major, like maybe if this was an IM Dallas,
you might get a bit more. Yeah.
A bit of less tense from all sides, right? Maybe you get a bit more vibes or jokes or whatever. Maybe if a game goes differently, there's something that we can get from it. So I'm not against the concept. I don't think it's like anything to be upset about or whatever. It's just like people trying stuff, and let's, you know, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, this was just one of the few things that actually drew any negative attention. So I thought we should bring that up. Obviously, at the top of the show, we discussed the idea about formats and stuff, but I think we get into that in a future episode because we need to be more comprehensive about it.
Yeah,
we can talk briefly about the format and how maybe it affected some things with the playoff bracket, but we'll get there shortly. Something that I do want to just kind of give a bit of insight on. So I mentioned TPA, which is what this was in. This is the tournament participation agreement. I got it right, Striker. You know, I finally got there. I did bring it up to Valve, and I said, based off of like what Graham had been out there saying and some of our conversations, that I believe that this document should be up to be publicly audited for a major. It also can help, you know, if people like us or the general public are able to look at this agreement and say, oh, I don't feel like that should be in there for a major, because at a major, the TO has the teams and the players, they got them by the balls. It's a major. Everybody wants to do the major. It's the biggest event. It's got the stickers, it's got the in-game integration. And if the TPA is not public, then the people at home aren't really privy to what's going on in there. So I did raise that with Valve. And as far as for majors concerned, they did seem like they were, I'm not going to speak for them, but it did feel like they were receptive to the idea of that being part of, you know, the public information. So we'll see how that affects StarLadder for Budapest. But yeah, that was just one thing I wanted to make note of. The other thing that I didn't like, and this comes from a general standpoint, I think, of how Blast do their events. I think that they are very entertainment focused. So the entertainment comes first in a Blast product as opposed to like the game. And I think that manifested itself in the way they did their playoff bracket for the Thursday and the Friday. I really didn't like the fact that, and Cyclone did an interview about this. I really don't like the way that they did different sides of the bracket on the Thursday and then the other, then like the same with the Friday. I feel that for the preparation for the teams, it should be fair. And having MOUZ and Spirit play on Thursday and then Vitality and NAVI play on Friday, I don't think that's, obviously it affected the other series too, but those are the bigger names. And the ones who like, you know, maybe had to prep. Well, what are you going to prep for FaZe, right? Like you don't had like all of fucking 12 maps to go off or something ridiculous. I didn't like that, and I understand why they did it because they split the best matches, so to guarantee more viewership across those days. But I really don't like that because
in the arena, especially. I mean, that was the big point, right? So.
I don't even know if that's why it was done. Because like when I know in advance that the plan was 3-0 teams play on the same day, essentially. So regardless,
3-0 teams should be opposite side of the bracket,
anyway, right? So that,
I'm just saying you don't really know who these teams will be. Like that was the plan. In advance, because I was talking to Blast to figure out which teams would be available to, you know, do stuff and blah blah. So the 3-0 teams and would play the 3-2 teams, right, on the first day, which was Thursday,
Thursday.
Friday, Friday quarterfinals.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they knew exactly which teams it would be when this plan was made. So I don't know what exactly motivated this slightly different approach to what you guys are saying is, the 2 quarterfinals that will meet together should be played on the same day, essentially.
Yes.
Which makes more
true,
sense.
actually, yeah.
Which makes more sense to me from like historic, and also just to have everyone have the same like off day in the playoffs. But yeah, at the same time, obviously the 3-2 teams and the 3-0 teams have different time off between the group stage and the playoff. So maybe it is because the 3-0 teams have a huge break to have them play first. I don't know. I don't really know what motivated the change. That's the only thing that I'm talking about.
Well, either way, I don't like
But I agree
change.
that it's better the way it was originally.
Yeah, it's true because they actually announced the schedule that way, and I remember double checking even if that's correct, because obviously historically we've had both matches happen on the same day of the same side. Yeah, that was actually announced ahead of time, so it's not really something that they just changed last minute.
Yeah, but I think either way, I think just for the preparation's sake, it should be same day for both the teams. Obviously, the team who plays later is going to have less prep time, right? But now we're talking about hours as opposed to days. So that, for me, I think is just one that I would like to see made consistent.
Yeah, funnily enough, the 2 teams that had less practice both won, MongolZ and Vitality, so it wasn't really a problem, let's say, in this case.
But that's the thing, that's not the point, right? Like,
sure,
that type of, we could do that to the cows come home. So I just think that's something that should be looked at there. One of the few things that I have to quote unquote complain about, I guess, it's just more to bring it up. The other thing that I think is important, because I am seeing these like passive aggressive classic Reddit and HLTV, maybe less HLTV. I feel like they're more reasonable with this stuff. I think it's Reddit ones, because these souvenirs that are the playoff ones, I'm seeing a lot of people be like, oh, is the major still going, Valve? Right? Because they can't claim their souvenirs for the playoff games. Now, I learned this from Blast themselves, not from Valve. So I don't feel like I'm giving anything away here that I shouldn't be saying, because I was talking to somebody at Blast, and when I had the conversation with him, he wasn't like, oh, you can't tell anybody this. So I'm going to assume that I can say this. We'll find it if I can or if I can't. But the souvenirs, the in-game itemization that's going to be happening for the highlights, right, of all the playoff matches, that is actually Blast's pitch to Valve, right? Valve didn't come up with this idea. Valve greenlit the idea, and they're the ones who are going to have the end, obviously in-game integration, but this is a Blast idea to do this, which is cool. I didn't realize that TOs were able to pitch in-game itemization stuff. I had no idea. So I learned that, and I thought that's really cool. And that's something that, because I'm never in my life, unless I'm working for a TO, ever going to be involved in what a major pitch looks like. And I'm never going to see one, right? I have no idea. I didn't even know this was possible. So to learn that from Blast was really, really cool. And so the thing is, the work though, besides the in-game, like how is it going to look in-game, but the actual videos themselves need to be done by Blast. And this isn't me like passing the buck and being like, well, hurry the fuck up then, Blast. Like, this is going to take time, right? I imagine they have like a week to deliver. I'm just speculating, maybe 2, to be able to get all the clips, because there has to be, as far as I'm aware, a bunch of clips for each map, right? And those also have to be done in like the world version of the game, as well as the Chinese version of the game, as well as different video size formats based on where the clip is going to be able to be played. So those things right there, we're only 3 days removed from the end of the major, and I'm sure that Blast have their team, whoever they've hired to do this, working day and night at the moment to try and smash through these clips to be able to deliver them to Valve to then be put in the game, so then people can claim their souvenirs.
I mean, so, it could also all be done and sent to Valve, but like according to sources, Valve had 35 people. Was it 25 or 35?
I think it was
25 people, which I think was 4 people and 21 paid actors, but
no, they're real. I met a lot of the people I met there were people I met in the office when I was there testing the game.
So they're hiring the same people for multiple roles.
Well, we know the same devs who go around to all the events. And when I talk to them, I go, well, how come more devs don't come? And they go, because we don't need fucking 20 people to come sit in a meeting with, like, I don't know, the people from ESL or the people from Blast, the people from PGL. Like, there's
I don't think that's the fun part of the job anyway, right?
And I think they came down obviously because it's in the States, and for most of them based in Seattle, it's much easier for them to go from point A to point B and get to an event like that. And you don't have to fly overseas, you don't have to do any of that nonsense. You're not away from the family for long periods of time because, but it was really cool to get to talk to a broader group of them. That doesn't mean that I don't love talking to the classic group, right? I like the classic group, but the broader group was fun. There's some characters in there. And it's also cool, like sitting in a room with a bunch of guys who are around my age or maybe a little bit older who used to play the old versions of Counter-Strike. And we're talking about like Warcraft 3 mod and shit. And where, you're kind of reminiscing about the old days. Not many people I can do that with. So it's kind of fun to have those kind of chats. And they're just a bunch of like cool people. So I just wanted to talk about the in-game itemization. So there we go.
From what I heard, it's not like one highlight per round. But it's also not like one highlight per game. So it's like somewhere between these two. It'll be a number.
It's a lot of highlights per game.
A lot of should be multiple because then you can have an item for each game that gives you something different. That's not just like you get one and that's it, right? So
maybe we've already said too much.
It'll be interesting to see how it turns out. Well, I didn't sign any NDAs, so.
I don't think we said too much. Like I said, I was actually talking to a Blast employee, maybe not even a Blast employee. I wouldn't say a Blast boss, but no, like a relatively high up member at Blast about this. And he was pretty forthcoming with the information. So I feel like it's fine for it to be. I just thought it was cool that they pitched an in-game itemization idea that Valve were happy with that they've integrated because this is really cool. I'm excited to see what they turn out being. Okay. Gentlemen, let's get into the meat and potatoes now. So we've kind of gone, a couple of the headlines around, good and bad. We've gone a bit more broad. Now we're going to point the funnel. So let's take a look. So let's go through, obviously, vitality. So I've just written a bunch of dot points here. These dot points we can debate, we can discuss. You guys can tear them apart. You can ask questions. You can elaborate. You can do whatever you want with these. But this is just like my musings while on the travel point home about these teams. So vitality, right? It's the Org second major. It's Apex's third major. He's becomes the most winningest player, right? Is it 33 trophies? He's overtaken everybody else. He's won the most trophies in Counter-Strike. flameZ plus mezii, it's their first major for the two of them. So that's UK's first major, which is actually a pretty big deal. Xtaz's first major win. He wasn't there with them when they won back in Paris. ropz back-to-back-to-back finals, winning this one, obviously, with Vitality. The near-flawless season, other than Bounty, that they kicked things off with. What else did I write down here? Oh, so yeah, some of this stuff we can get into a little bit deeper. I wrote best season of all time, ? Then I said Vitality era, ? And then is an era a feeling or a science ? So
that's a good one.
That's a good one.
And then finally, ZywOo 7 MVPs. So those were kind of the dot points I went with.
Let's start. Can I start with flameZ?
Let's go.
I think that was a little fun one for me. I mean, obviously, really good player. Insane season for everyone on Vitality. But I talked to him a bit after the event, and I was like, I don't think you understand what you guys accomplished, and what you especially accomplished, because when you think about Apex and ZywOo, obviously they had a shit ton of success, and ZywOo, you'd probably have success regardless of where he is or anything around him. Like, he is winning in shit teams and bad environments with, let's be real, the old Vitalities, 2019, 2020 Vitalities were overall not really great teams, and he was doing great. But for flameZ to kind of he just came out of OG into Vitality with a bit of smart managing of his own contract being free at the time. Because it's not like when he came into Vitality, he was like, this guy is going to be the next superstar, Kiyosuke, or whatever hype. He was he's a pretty decent player. He's playing pretty well. But the reason he got signed is because he did not extend with OG, just let that contract run out.
Yeah.
And actually, he did a mini extension just for the major in Paris. And to not commit to a huge contract or whatever. And then that finished, and they were let's just replace dupreeh that we just won a major with this young kid, because there's talent, and he is now a great available signing. So a great bit of personal career management, and then just what he achieved in these 6 months is quite insane. No one can ever promise you to have these 6 months regardless of how good you are. And I was talking to him a bit about that, and he was like, it's everything is just going so fast, and everything is just like, oh, one tournament you win another tournament, and just keeps on going like this, and you're not really, I don't think you can even stop and like appreciate what's going on. And now he's a major winner, and everyone's gonna put them as favorites to win the second major as well, but who knows what's gonna happen with that. I just thought there's a cool little story of a guy that, if he played his card differently, he might have been now who knows where in the world.
He could be the Fiku. He could be. But he always had like coming up from Endpoint, right? I think when he was on our screens, he always, especially, was very sharp, and he has a good attitude for it, right? It seems, even though he's a trolly type of guy, he's still quite mature, right? Like he's the type. Him and Apex combined, they're kind of the louder, more emotional heart of the team. But even still, like when I talk to him in a serious conversation, he is very capable of doing that. What was it? He was 22 on the 22nd. What was it? There was three things about 22 that was in there.
June 22nd, 22nd major.
Yes, okay, there you go. So, that's a great little birthday present for him.
Sell in-game items at the best prices in just a couple of clicks. We are the biggest instant sell service for in-game items like Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and Rust. Easy selling process and instant withdrawal of funds to the most popular payment methods. More than 140,000 deals and 50,000 active sellers every month. Use promo code HLTV5 and get a 5% bonus on the sale of your skins. Skin Place. Sell items now.
When every move counts, your chair shouldn't hold you back. Top esports players are switching to Anthros for unbeatable support and performance that keeps them in the game longer. Designed to support your unique shape and built with medical-grade components, Anthros is setting a new standard for comfort. Check out the Anthros difference today and get ready to fix your sit, because gaming deserves more than just a chair.
For you guys, there'll just be like an ad break and we'll be back. But a lot of things happen there. I went out there and unloaded the dishwasher. Striker's now got a big box in the background. Prof's reading fucking Twitter bait. It's all happening. Better than Twitter porn, but either way. All right, so we were talking about Vitality. We were saying some nice things about Flames. Do you want me to read the list of things I had again? Or do people have things that they want to say about Vitality?
I mean, the whole era discussion and stuff.
Well, that's a big one, right?
Discussion is a big one. Obviously,
is it the best season of all time?
I think that's undeniable.
I think also the fact is we didn't really have seasons always.
True.
Things did flow differently sometimes. Things would end before the major would start, end the season. It was kind of messy, but I think if we're talking about a season like 6 months, I don't think we've ever had something like this. And I don't think we ever had a team that won 7 tournaments in a row.
No, not like this. No, I mean the only like team that you can compare this to in any way is an IP. And at the beginning, like, I'm not one of those people who will just like devalue everything an IP have done. If anything, the other way, I've been fighting against that sort of a thinking. That like people are like, yeah, who cares about the 87-0, man? I'm like, how can you say that? But still, like it's more about like what kind of tournaments those the ones that an IP were. It wasn't the same established circuit, where you had all the same teams playing at the same tournaments. We didn't really know who were the best teams, and some of them might not have played in all of these tournaments. We don't even have like a big event filter, for the early events, because a lot of them were just a lot of random teams sometimes, like the qualification system wasn't super set. Again, we didn't know who the best teams were. We had no data, so like to invite all the best teams was pretty much impossible. And so like a lot of these tournaments were always very different. And yeah, I mean, of course, there's also the competition argument, like the competition at the time was just not at a completely different level. And nobody's done this. Nobody's had like basically a perfect season ever since. Not even the Fnatics, not even like we have Fnatic go on this six tournament win streak in 2016. I want to say like 15 to 16, right? Was the brink, and that's like the closest that we have to anything like this, And of course, like this includes like 2 of the big ones, and it's just it is undeniable that it is the best season so far because of all that. It is kind of unimaginable, that this is still possible even at this point. Obviously, we said the same when Astralis were doing what Astralis were doing. We were like, okay, like at this point, we didn't think this was going to be like anybody would equal a a season or a couple of seasons in a row of Astralis, and yet here we are. Like it is still possible, and that's even if you can make the argument that there are players of the same stature as ZywOo out there, right? And like on other teams. So it is just impressive. It is almost hard for me to imagine that they won't have the sort of a 1.5, 2-year stretch of vitality just because of Astralis, just because at the time Astralis also didn't, like throughout 2018, 2019, they also didn't win everything. And so even if Vitality just win 2 more tournaments for the rest of the year, and then for everything else, they're like in finals, in semis all the time, constantly showing they're competitive, they're competing for all the tournaments. That's the same thing that happened with Astralis at points. Like they would have like a streak of couple of tournaments where they wouldn't win, but then they would win one, then they would go to the final, then they would win a couple. They were constantly in the fight for trophies in that period, and they just won a lot during that 2-year period. That makes it an era, right? Obviously, like I don't want to get too much into the era discussion. I think maybe that's kind of a like, is it a science? Is it emotion? I think it's both to some degree, right? It's not, you can't really put it down to science, but also like it is. There's some like
there has to be some criteria for sure.
Of course, there's like the aura behind it as well, because it's like
yes,
how much of it. Like, let's say, is half of a year enough? That's like a big discussion for me. For example, like the only teams that we consider having an era is, at least I do, is all the ones that were dominant for a longer period of time than just 6 months. Like this vitality streak, you can maybe, like the closest comparison to that in a season would be Liquid, right? But then obviously they didn't have the major. And so this is kind of like the major extra compared to what Liquid did. And at the time we even had more tournaments and all that stuff, So, but we don't consider Liquid an era, and even if they had that major, I don't think we would have considered that an era. It was an amazing season, of course, and I think
this was like a summer fling. You know?
Exactly.
You had a great time, but you're probably not calling her again. It was one you remember it. You remember her name.
Yeah,
but,
I mean it's the same thing with and like I know a lot of Brazilians were like, oh, SK had an era, but like they won 2 majors and they won like 2 more tournaments in that year, but that was about it. It's like 4 tournaments in a year, while like a lot of these like that's not so unimaginable, like so unique. Let's say, of course, it's 2 majors, and that's what makes it unique. But 2 majors don't make an era, right? Like that's not an era.
They could if it's a science.
Of course, yeah.
yeah. But this is the thing; it's like the GOAT
debate too. But then NIP don't have an era because they didn't have a major until their era ended. So.
Yeah, there you go. But it's like the GOAT debate, right? Like people have different criteria of how they want to look at that player, and I think that's okay. I think that's the whole point of these mechanics is to have these type of conversations, right? Yeah. Because as pundits or enjoyers or people who consume the game, these are the things that we're looking for, and I think that it has only been 6 months, but it's been, you said it yourself, undeniable that it's the best season of all time. But the prop brings in a very astute point at the fact that everything is changing and it will always forever be changing. Right now we have a structure that makes a whole lot more sense. We don't just have majors in the middle of the season anymore, thank God. We had a nice way that the story kind of ramped up and built. And I think like in the modern day, based off what you were saying, this was something that it felt like was never going to happen again. At least a team that had this level of dominance. So this is where, for me, all eras are not going to be the same, and they're not going to be measured the same, and they're not going to have the same things that play into them. But right now, I think I threw around the world the word dynasty before, which is like Astralis. I would probably put them in like dynasty capacity based off of like them being the greatest Counter-Strike team of all time, and then what they did over that 2-year span. For Vitality, I could say that I think that this is the Vitality era right now, and if they continue to build out from here and have another good 6 months, and then they have then that residual is into another year, and they don't have to win everything like you were saying, then they could join the dynasty conversation. And now it's just fucking semantics, but I'm having a way to separate the greatest of all time from the very, 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 very good, right? So, I couldn't be more impressed with Vitality.
So is it for you the fact that, the period is shorter, but the level of winning is so high that it doesn't matter? Like, essentially for you, it's like, it's only been 6 months, but in these 6 months, they won everything. That's why it's an era?
Yeah, like obviously I call it the near perfect season, obviously because of the bounty situation. Yeah. But in terms of from when ropz joined to then the level of Counter-Strike that they're playing, I think player for player and the way that they use their players as well, like they play comprehensive Counter-Strike. Like it's a joy to watch, right? From the Astralis days, it felt like it was going to be hard to see anybody level the game up because of, just how they changed the blueprint of utility and the way that rounds were played. Obviously, with CS2, certain things changed with the clearing of the smokes and stuff. But I think in terms of like mastering the way that the modern game should be played, Vitality are the ones who set the meta. And I think if you're the team who's setting the meta and you're so dominant and teams are changing lineups and chasing you to be able to beat you, and by doing so, they're still not even really getting close.
Yeah.
Like, I understand they lost maps.
There are some close situations. There's a 12-6.
Yeah, but it's got to be exciting. It's got to be exciting here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah. I want to just contrast again to Astralis, because like also something talking to people in Austin made me realize a lot of the fans are newer fans, like post-COVID fans and everything. So and everyone understands Astralis was great, but just to put it in context, like 2018 is when. That's when it started. Then 2019, they had some like dips, and then 2019 they were winning again. But 2018 they got MagicCon a bit before that. Katowice is the first event, finished 3rd to 4th. Then they win in Marseille. That was their first win with the lineup. That was also like Simple's insane performance that they surpassed as a team, right? Then they go to Sydney, and Sydney has been problematic for device like health issues and stuff like that. But in Sydney, they lose the grand final. This was to FaZe, if I remember right, who had a stand-in then.
Was that Exist at the time?
Exist stand-in. Yeah. So that was kind of crazy result. And then they go to win EPL. They win ECS. They go to Cologne. They lose in Cologne to NAVI. Third map, Zeus dropping a 30 bomb. That's insane. Mm-hmm. That doesn't really happen. But they still lost, right? They finished 3rd to 4th. And already they have lost Katowice and Cologne 3rd to 4th, which are now more established as top tournaments than they were then. I believe they were obviously top tournaments, but I think now we put them on a higher pedestal than we did. That I'm not saying they didn't deserve to be put back then, but it's just more recognized by the public. Then when E-League CSGO Premier, I don't know what was this. It was a smaller E-League.
It was a pretty big tournament. It was a 16 team, I'm pretty sure. 16 teams? At the time. I'm pretty sure that was the 16 team one already.
I think this was 8 team. This is an 8 team tournament. So it wasn't that crazy. Then they go to DreamHack Master Stockholm, lose to North in the grand final.
Oh my god, MSL changed his sensitivity.
MSL MVP, the most iconic MVP photo. Everyone holds it like this. He holds it like he's doing a Kamehameha. It was amazing. Then they go on to win the FaZe Major. That's also some. At this point, I was thinking this is Simple's first major coming at this event, because when you just look at that season, it doesn't look that crazy. They have won 1, 2, 3, 4 events, but they haven't won the biggest ones. Then they win the FaZe Major, win Blast, win IM Chicago. ECS season 6, and then they win EPL, Lisbon, right? They get the Grand Slam there. And overall, when you look at that whole year, shit ton of titles. One major, right?
Yeah.
Only one major in that time. So overall, a really good year, but the level of dominance that Vitality have now, it's not there, right? They have lost to different teams, and lost to teams. A team with a stand-in, a team that, as North, has never won anything notable. That's their biggest trophy of all time. That one trophy that they won at DreamHack. So I want to say that it's not an era because it's so short, because it is just 6 months, and I really want to see them survive a player break and continue with the same level of motivation and dominance, and it doesn't even need to be the same level of dominance, but they need to keep winning trophies after the major, after the player break, because that's what kind of stopped Liquid. As much as we want to like talk shit about them, their run was insane, and they didn't get to play a major at the end of that.
Sure, they had to wait.
At the end of the season, because the major was at the start of the season, and they didn't win that one. They were pretty decent there. But ultimately, they ramped up after that period, and then the player break happened. They came from the break, and they didn't look good at that FaZe major. Not FaZe, the Starlighter major, regardless of what people want to say, the group stage was
They lost to
struggling.
Australis in the playoffs, though, right?
Yeah, but
Vertigo played into it.
But the reason why they did was because their group stage was bad, so they were seeded poorly into the playoffs. So ultimately, it just wasn't the team. I don't think it was like unlucky bracket or anything. It was just the fact that they were not that good, and after that, they were not that good for the rest of the season. So I agree with Jason's tweet from the other day that it's not an era yet, but I think it's just a matter of time. I do believe they will get there, but I would like to see them do it before presuming anything, right?
Yeah, but this is the thing with the era, right? Normally it's in like retrospect when we're looking back, unless it goes for such a long period of time, and then you're like, well, we're clearly in the era right now, right?
Yeah.
But I'm impressed with the season they've had for sure. And I like the complexion of the team. Obviously, the addition of ropz, like they go, oh, he's a hard worker, goes this, that. I think the thing that because ropz at the end of last year, it looked like he didn't even want to, not that he didn't want to be in FaZe, but he felt like he was playing more for himself, right? The team was kind of falling apart and it wasn't very cohesive. And then now in this team, it's back to being a team. You're getting like the best out of ropz. It frees up mezii. I think mezii's the biggest winner other than Neo from Vitality with this change, because like mezii actually gets some more active positions, which is nice. ropz is the best player in his role in the world. That's not even up for conversation, right?
I wanted to just like bring up something to support that while you're on this subject, because Harry tweeted yesterday something that really resonated with me, and that makes so much sense. And he says, you can take a lot of lessons from Vitality, what Maui said about Apex's dynamic calls, ZywOo the GOAT, firepower era, but I think they also show you that in a world where T-roles are more fluid than ever, there's still space for an old school entry support lurker composition. It's the opposite to other Reach teams like Falcons, who replaced their anchor with Kyosuke. That team's never signing a mezii. Even flameZ is a soldier of an entry, not a luxury playmaker like the meta openers who end up lurking mid-round. Vitality to me are all about being low bandwidth and high specialism, so it's fitting that their era was brought about by the ultimate example of that in the OG star anchor of ropz. And I think that just describes Vitality like perfectly and how they approach the game in a, as Harry says, in an era where the roles are much more kind of overlapping, as like more overlapping than ever almost, since we had kind of like the concept of roles, come about it a bit more, So it's very interesting how they go even deeper into the specialization of each one. Like the only one that isn't so specialized in that team, you would say, is probably mezii, because he is so kind of like, he is sometimes in the active position, sometimes not. That's also more of a T-side thing, of course, what Harry was talking about. Like mezii also has a lot of good T-side positions as well. So that's part of it. But like everybody else is very highly specialized in that team. So that's very interesting.
The thing that I like with ropz is like when we say anchor or when we say lurker, people like initially are going to think more passive. But if you look at the way ropz plays his positions, he, like on Inferno, for example, he's very, very aggressive in halls and boiler. And like the fact that he's always mixing that up makes it very difficult for the opponent. Something they do very, like their Inferno has been more miss than hit lately for them. But I just think as well on the T sides, ropz will take the space that has the door open late, as opposed to taking the space late, which means the call is fucked for Apex. Like if your lurker, we'll just keep using Inferno as the example, like isn't taking enough space on boiler and halls and isn't like challenging or baiting enough utility and hasn't taken enough room as you guys are all getting in banana for the execute, and then you get blocked at B again by a smoke that you weren't expecting, and Apex like, fuck, well, I want to go back, but because your lurker hasn't taken that room, it feels like I have to go through that smoke. It limits your options, and it feels like the way that ropz plays his positions, it gives more options within these rounds to the team.
I mean, that's kind of what the whole criticism, a lot of criticism about Spinks can be. If I go back, I remember a lot of the Inferno plays where his lurks were either too passive or too aggressive, as in he's dying when he shouldn't be dying. And some of the losses that they have, I mean, even the Dallas one to G2 when they had Stewie as a stand-in, there's a bunch of plays from Spinks where it's just like, you're really not maximizing your shareholder value here with the plays that you're making, because you're just the decision making in the moment was not on point. And I think ropz is, I mean, I think you even undersold how bad his last year was. Obviously, the major in Shanghai kind of changed how we remember it, but for the most of that year, he wasn't that influential on FaZe. He was just it felt like he was just like a passenger on an overall bad bus ride throughout the year. It's just like no one is really making any difference. And he's a type of player that I think if the rest of the team is not doing anything, what can you really do? If the entry pack and the Opera are struggling, you either can overexert yourself, which is going to be super predictable over a while, or you're just going to be, doing your own thing in a more passive way where you also don't have impact. So it's kind of not up to you. And I don't know. I believed in the comeback, but honestly, in this capacity, also slightly surprised how well it went. Right?
Yeah. Well, everything's worked out perfectly for them, hasn't it? I feel like Apex winning another major after like 10 years since his first is pretty cool. Obviously, right now he joins the conversation of in-game leaders as well in terms of like this is where it gets tough, right? Because in terms of this 6 months, and he has been leading the team for a decent amount of time now, but that people start throwing around this conversation, well, is he considered one of the greatest in-game leaders of all time now? That's one of the things that you're comparing him to Carrigan, who has like a very large body of work. You're comparing him to a Glaive, who was, again, part of the greatest team of all time, right? We're talking 4 majors in the... this is the thing. The majors
a hard comparison.
The majors are the big... That's how we're going to measure things mainly. Like, if they get the second major of this year and then they win the second major of next year or something, it's like, okay, well, fucking hell. Like, 3 majors over the course of a year, that's over the course of 2 years, that's fucking crazy, right? And then his cabinet, at that point, he'll be at 5. So, like... Obviously, the first one wasn't with him as an in-game leader, but hey, like I think that it's an interesting conversation. But I feel like he's in the conversation, but it's too early for him to be put above anybody like that, right? But he's encroaching on that conversation, which I think is fair because the one thing that I really like about looking at Apex's journey is how he's developed as a human being. Like whether that be physically, like he clearly takes his health as a very serious thing, right? You see the way in the last couple of years that importance, and people go, oh, well, he's just going to the gym. It's like, but the level of impact that has on your mental, especially a guy like him who has like such a large energy that he puts out there in the world. He also has to learn how to be a leader. One of my biggest criticisms with this whole move was, how is ropz going to deal with Apex going off his fucking tree at him in the server? And it's like, well, clearly that hasn't been happening. Obviously, it doesn't need to happen when you're winning. But that was one, and I'm sure him as a person, he knows that, and he always talks about it. He's like, well, look, if my players are okay with it, then that's the thing that matters at the end of the day. And I'm sure he's curtailed it from what it was in the beginning to what it is now, to the way that he leads his team, to the way. So you got to give respect to him, and then the brain trust they got over there with Xtaz and Matt, right?
But I mean, for that conversation, I don't necessarily think that much has changed. It's just that this team is so fucking good that it's like hard. Like, how could you tilt at people, if things are they're never going wrong, really?
They had some moments. They had some moments this tournament. Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like, once they start losing and you see that from Apex, that those talks will start happening again. Like, why is he making things worse and stuff like that? That's more about this kind of specific angle about it. I don't necessarily think that's changed. That's changed a lot. But obviously, being able to make the most out of the pieces that he has. Obviously, he has great pieces, but also like having we would not expect mezii, let's say, to be part of the greatest team of an era or whatever, or whatever you want to call it. Do you feel that's
underselling mezii a bit though? Because
no, it's more about like his history, right? Like, let's say a year ago, we would have said like a year ago we were calling for mezii to be replaced, right? Because or at least that was a big conversation. Let's say for him to be the next one out of Vitality, not Spinks. At this point, if it wasn't ropz, like nobody else would have replaced Spinks probably in that role, at least. So it would have been mezii we would have been looking at. So like that's one. Like all this role swapping that happened, like being able to give mezii a little bit more space so he can have the impact, and you can see that in his confidence now. Like he makes so many good plays, he clutches so many rounds, and that's I'm sure in big part because of how Apex put him in these positions, how he figured out how the roles work together, and maybe swapping some places here and there, and so like to enable all of that. Out of all of his pieces, I think is great. The way that he utilized flameZ, I think from the beginning, even if they didn't have so much success, like that I think was also great. Like he was playing up to his strengths, and that's important. And so there's Apex definitely deserves his flowers. I just wanted to combat that, his tilt moments and all that stuff. I think there will be plenty of those down the line.
I want to say 2 things on this. First is, you said it about how is ropz going to handle this and everything. And every time there's this conversation about tilting, people are always like, well, it doesn't matter because his teammates don't care and blah, blah, and you're all children because you don't know how it is in professional sports or whatever. dupreeh was on the desk. He was talking about this. By the way, I don't know if you know dupreeh won 5 majors. He's kind of a good player and quite, quite experienced, and like his opinions are pretty relevant. And he also won a major with Apex, and he said he hated it. He said it, that it really did affect him, and that he had to like try to deal with it as much as best as possible. So it's just from his mouth, not from mine, not from me. So it's not something every player is completely fine with and doesn't affect them at all. And I'm not saying, oh, Apex tilted one time, therefore it I don't know, you can play a 0.5 rating game and it's all on Apex. I'm not saying this at all, but I'm saying it like it affects people, and people don't. Not everyone is completely fine with it. That's it. But then also Apex said at this tournament, and I just want to counter Striker there because obviously they started the tournament losing to Legacy, getting their ass whooped on their best map, I guess. Yeah. Should have been at least going into the major. Apex said that he didn't tilt once this event, which is like his personal development as well being shown there. I mean, maybe he's lying, and we can't verify this. It would also be a
result of the last 6 months because he understands like they've done so much, they've recovered so much, that like one best of one loss, like that's not gonna tilt you. Like if you go down to 2-0-2, I think that's where we start getting into problems,
But even in the final, losing the first map, that looked pretty bad at some points. Like they were getting farmed by 9-10. They looked completely like weak. I don't know, impotent almost in that half. But they kept it together and fought back. But I definitely agree. Like winning 6 tournaments in a row and coming back from 12-6 and coming back in all of these games, because they lost maps in the previous tournaments and finals and everything, and they got.
There were plenty of times where they were close to losing series, and this streak would have been over way earlier, right?
So that definitely helps, but it also is a part of like him developing as an IGL, because like every percentage matters, right? So if because he was going in some of these breaks, he would be, I would say, lively and maybe agitated even, but like not tilted, not like, mid-round going into people unnecessarily maybe. But, if you're doing this once every 3 days when things really go wrong, I think that's fine. Like, because then that shows like, okay, guys, wake the fuck up. This is not how we play. And then that can be a positive thing. But if you're doing this fucking every third round, tilting at something, then I think that has no positive impact. It's just like annoying to feel, right? It needs to have weight, but if it happens all the time, then it doesn't really have any positive weight in my eyes.
Yeah, I wanted to just say about Apex also, and just maybe it's part of this the leadership or whatever it is, but I mean, the way that he dealt with this whole, like, obviously it was partly meme from the American crowd, like the fuck you Apex, and that being like from Dallas and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was from Dallas last year, wasn't it? Like it's existed for a while.
It's been going for a while. And I think it's a result. It's from the. It might have been from the Stewie Dallas that it originated, or I don't know where it originated exactly. It doesn't necessarily matter so much, but it's also obviously, when you've antagonized the crowd, or when the entire crowd is against you, like that can have an effect. But the way that he comes up to the major final, just raises up with a middle finger to the entire crowd, like nobody hated anybody else. Like nobody was shouting shit at other people in Vitality. It was only Apex, right?
Sure.
And he absorbed that like crazy. Like it's insane, like how he embraced that and like absorbed all the pressure from the crowd. He was the one, taking it all and like, giving them all the fuck yous and all that stuff. And like everybody else was just having fun around it because they just looked at Apex and he's like, they did like fuck. You saw ZywOo like in one of the middle of the final series, or was it the semifinal? I don't remember, where he was like chanting with the crowd like fuck you Apex. So like you can see like that also has a positive effect on a team, how much he's able to just completely absorb that pressure. He also played great in that final, of course. I mean, he was the top rated player.
Yeah.
And like that's the insane part of Vitality now, and that's partly what I was talking about. Like with that, you would almost be fooled that they don't have a superstar, because they have loads of these games where like ZywOo's good. He has like one great map in a final or like in a game, but the other one he's there. He's just there. He doesn't really have to do anything if he doesn't show up sometimes that just doesn't even matter. A lot of the times that doesn't even matter. So it's that's the incredible parts about Vitality, the depth, the amount of games that they've recovered. But losses in the series, like in the MOUZ one or the beginning of the final. It's impressive. It's really super impressive.
But that point right there goes back to the Astralis days, right? Because Astralis, it wasn't like Glaive was a potato and he was being carried. It's like everybody did what they needed to do. Glaive was like a really impactful, aggressive in-game leader. He was making good calls and defining how the game should be played, but then would have games where he was at the top of the scoreboard. ZywOo would anchor the sides when the chips were down. He'd come up with the big clutches, right? dupreeh would be on the entries with the multi-kills. You'd have Device doing the job on the AWP, but he was always that type of AWPer that he's not going to take the AWP into every environment, right? And then the Magic edition too. So that's the thing with the great teams. It has to be a team.
It's actually eerily you could match up the 5 players from that Astralis and this Vitality team quite well. Like obviously they're not the same players, but ZywOo Device obviously also pretty similar in terms of. I know we said Device was a passive AWPer, but I think for that era he was passive, and in today's era he was pretty measured. Like he would go for openings. I think him and ZywOo have a lot of similarities in terms of like playing the fundamentals super well. flameZ and dupreeh, I feel like super aggressive players, happy to go in first, happy to like
good soldiers,
right, for the team, like trying to lift the spirits up. But I also think both players have some issues in terms of like sometimes in the big games could a bit get to them, like we saw with flameZ. I think dupreeh together with Device back in the olden days of these Danish rosters had troubles in big games. Then you have mezii with the ZywOo, kind of the anchoring, clutching out situations. You could also say ropz, but I think ropz is more of a magic in terms of like in a bit better impact, sure. MVP potential and all of that. Like, and then Apex as Glaive both have some of the better roles. They're not like full on, as you said, potato IGLs, but they also put themselves in positions where they can rotate and have more action on the CT sides of maps. Like there's quite a good overlap between these 5 on both lineups.
Well, if you're being compared to Astralis, that's already a damn good thing. But we could sit here and glaze Vitality all day. Do we have any more comments on Vitality before we want to move on?
I would just say like about the first map of the final, like Prof said something earlier, like where they look a little bit lost. I also think like they lost just exactly the wrong situations in ways where that probably is not going to happen the second time around, like, for example, the techno clutch, that he just gets exactly the right timing where they don't expect him. Like, he goes half a second later, and I think they consider that angle, for example, there was another one of those clutches that they lost just barely, and like the both of them came in situations where that was an economy break situation, they had to go back on half by eco or whatever, and then the half spirals, right? And then they lose the pistol, and then it's basically over very quickly, right? That just will happen sometimes, especially in MR12. Where games will just get away from you very quickly. We saw it in the Legacy game at the beginning of the year, so at the beginning of the major. So like the way that they even lost the first map of the final, like of course it had me worried in the sense
it was
of
pretty
like
stunning.
It's just one map away from MongolZ being a major winner, right? But I was still pretty calm in that the MongolZ were not going to win those situations the same way again. Like it was always Vitality who won all these situations in previous tournaments, right? And like if they get unlucky on one map or like they just don't win the clutches on one map, it's unlikely to happen the second time because we know how strong they are. And especially it's not going to happen in the bad moments all the time, And we saw that happen in Inferno. Like ZywOo wins the weird 1v2 in second round and it's over because like that's the round that if MongolZ win, then we can get into like another 5-0 start, for MongolZ, and we get worried. But then that's when Vitality win the one clutch that they need. They have a pretty decent start, and like they're never worried for the rest of the series ever again. So like it was just still very measured. Didn't really have me worried that start. Well,
this is good. It takes us to the next topic of conversation, which was MongolZ. Now the dot points I wrote down for them were less, but I wouldn't say less impactful. So I wrote first Asian team in major final. I wrote country support and got their stage legs. Now the biggest one for me, actually no, they're all big. I guess it's just from a bunch of different angles, right? So there's never been a conversation were MongolZ a good Counter-Strike team. It was, could MongolZ do it on the stage? Which for the better part of the season, they were unable to do so, right? Like, you take a look at the wins that they had. Twice they played against Aurora/EF, who were also as inexperienced in that environment as they were. And teams that we continue to compare, and the Turkish fans fucking hate it because they want it to be all about them, but fuck them. We're talking about the MongolZ. Guess what? We don't have to compare you anymore because they can now do it on the stage, whereas your boys didn't even get there. So this is the big one for me, is the fact that they take down FaZe. I think that's the unlocking win, being against the home crowd, but not in like a way that I classified it as hostile while I was casting. And obviously the crowd wanted FaZe to win, but it wasn't hostile in the sense that they were pulling on beards and spitting on them or anything like that. It was just like, you guys aren't the favorites in this game. We're going to be going for FaZe because of Elysian, Simple, and FaZe. To win there, and then to have like the crowd as you go down the stretch when they played against Pain, chanting Senzu's name after winning clutches for Senzu. It's so weird, man. Why is it the guys that, you know, have a little bit of a tainted past always end up being like fan favorites? Because Senzu, remember, a long time ago, was apparently in trouble with some like skin scamming stuff when he was a kid. And, you know, it's got like the simple flavor about it. He's definitely got an attitude. Like, you look at his Instagram, he likes all the rap music and stuff. Not that rap music means anything about you. I feel like a boomer. But, you know, the crowd really likes Senzu. They're cheering his name. Like, obviously people love Mezii and stuff, but 9-10 playing really well. The final you were just talking about, their striker, like 9-10 getting that ace. Like, those are like massive unlocking type of plays and moments with confidence, and they're making big steps on the stage after, you know, making a bunch of playoffs throughout the year. 7 out of 9 the events that they played, they're in the playoffs. Now, some of those are studio events. They lost to Vitality in a bunch of those. Like, think about, they lost to Vitality in Dallas. 2, I think. Yeah, Dallas. They also lost them in Katowice. So they lost to Vitality a bunch of times. So some of the narrative out there from people is like, well, you know, it's not that they suck on stage, it's that they just lost to Vitality. It's not to do with who they lost to, it's to do with how they conducted themselves. And I think if you look at the difference in how they conducted themselves on the stage in the environments against Pain, obviously a lesser team, also inexperienced in that environment, FaZe, they should be the beast in that environment. And then the final, it was a different looking team to the one we had seen throughout the year. So for me, it's massive that they've got their stage legs now, and I look forward to seeing if they can hopefully carry that through into the next part of the year, because it'd be great to have MongolZ actually contending in the playoff games. Because the playoffs were starting to get a little bit light on, right? You had Falcons, you had MOUZ, you had Spirit, you had Vitality. After that, there was that void. But if MongolZ joined, now we got 5, right? We know these roster changes are going to be happening after this break too. So we'll see who else can join into that mix. But that was great, and I'm really happy that they can perform. But seeing the sheer amount of fans across Mongolia showing up in the wee hours of the morning, because it's GMT +8 for them while those games are going on for the States, mate. I couldn't believe the amount of people in different locations that we would be seeing. It was absolutely insane. Like, I've never seen anything like it, Prof.
I mean, I don't think you can understand it. First of all, since you're from Australia, which is such a bigger country, it has a lot
in terms of
going
people
on.
or things.
No, in terms of what happens in some of these, like when a team or something has huge success, how like the whole country rallies behind it.
Sure.
Like, I think it's more similar to, I don't know, Croatia had like good run in handball like 10, 15 years ago when I was in like middle school or some shit. And then suddenly, like next year, everyone is playing fucking handball. Who the fuck cares about handball? It's a dog shit sport. Obviously, football is better than maybe basketball, than, I don't know, water polo or some shit. But no, we had like one good like generation playing like European and World Championship, getting in semis or finals or whatever. And now every kid is buying those stupid like handball shoes, and everyone's playing handball, going in handball practice. Like, this is kind of what is happening in Mongolia right now with MongolZ, because like, I don't know really, honestly, what they do. What is the national sport of Mongolia? Does anyone know? I don't know. I don't really, anything I watched.
Something to do with falcons or horse riding.
Yeah, it's not something that has like huge international, global audience, whatever it might be. You can
wrestling, try. Mongolian wrestling.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Anyway, so when you have something like this, where for the Mongolians going on the stage, having the Mongolian flag in all across the world, they have obviously support, the national support of the government now going on as well. Like, okay, Mongolia might be world champions. I feel like that's what happens when you have that kind of opportunity. It just becomes the whole nation is like, okay, let's see if we will accomplish this and be on the map in a way that we haven't been, I don't know, since when. So it is crazy, but it's also, I don't know, it is kind of unprecedented for Counter-Strike to have this kind of an impact in a country, I would say. I don't think we had this before.
You can also, the writing was on the wall, like when you see the stream numbers for like Mongolian audience, right? Like they have something like, what was it, like 5% of the population watching a game or something like that.
The whole country is 3 million people, something like that.
Yeah, and I think it was somewhere like 80,000 or so, like on the Mongolian stream. Maybe some of those are not Mongolian, but I'm sure vast majority of those will be. And so you can tell that how much they love it, especially this team. I don't necessarily know whether that's Counter-Strike in general, how that would look like if whatever Chinggis Warriors were playing, whatever. I'm sure that there's also a lot of like grassroots Counter-Strike stuff going on. MISA has been operating there for a while now, and they put on a lot of stuff. So I'm sure that that's also part of it, you know, that it is a Counter-Strike small country, but a Counter-Strike country. So I think this all contributes. But obviously, like this wouldn't have reached these levels without a team like suddenly competing on the playoffs, competing on the stages all the time, you know, and just inspiring all the people of Mongolia. It's just very cool.
Yeah, when you're seeing like ice hockey stadiums filled out so they can look on the screen in the ice hockey stadium, it's that's so cool. Like that was really quite cool to see. So yeah, I think I'm excited mainly for the future of that just roster, because you know if they didn't do anything at this major, it's like, oh, do they have to make a roster change? And then it's like, does that set them back? So they don't fall into that conversation now. The conversation changes. They've made the necessary steps. You know, they're continuing to progress. So that's really good. I only have nice things to say about the MongolZ. They're a lovely bunch of guys. Always very friendly.
The rumors are academy team getting
it's not even a rumor.
They tweeted themselves that they're going to have.
So
I'm curious
that's
what
cool.
they do there, though. Do they go for like actual young players, or do they just pick up players from like some of the known names? That's going to be interesting, because we've seen a bunch of names come through their team over the years. So. Yeah,
or a mixture of both. Like I think what makes sense is like they're so far. Like for the MISA tournament that happened, it was like classified as a tier 2 tournament. I think the next one that's happening in the fall is as well. Like MongolZ can't play that because they're too high ranked, right?
Yeah.
And you'd want to have presence of your brand locally in these tournaments. So it makes sense for them to just have, you know, that kind of a team that is maybe competing for these titles, maybe competing with the Huns and Chinggis Warriors and stuff like that if they can. And that's not even that huge of a step down potentially in terms of like individual player quality. So it could be their way to get, you know, talent if they need it in the future. If they need that, you know, Techno 4K replacement, which is something that people have been talking about, maybe that's where he comes in, and maybe Techno goes down to that team, and he can continue to have like a good.
He had more career. Impact in the bigger matches than he did in other games. So I think,
and he had to be right because like some of his individual level from time to time was definitely holding them back, and as well as senzu, who's been great this event, from that like G2 56 kill game to the playoffs to like some of the clutches, even the clutch that he had on Dust 2 that they did get wiped out on overall, but that was one of the standout moments, right? He made a huge play, 4K, I think 1v3 on the B bomb site, and you know you need that from your star player.
Well, he's playing like an X Factor player. You know, it's great to see. I think there was a lot of fans there for the MongolZ, and when I say that, not just like becoming fans because they were there was, I guess they would be Mongolian Americans, American Mongolians. I don't know how you would frame it, so I'm not trying to offend anybody here, but there was like 3 blokes I met at the front of the hotel one day.
Yeah,
and they were like, same guys, I think. Yeah, they had the ones with the big chain on, the one that the big glowy thing. Yeah, I was talking with them, and they were like, we only came for the quarterfinal days. And then they were at the front of the hotel for then the semi-final day, and I saw him, I saw him walking into the venue, and then I spoke to him later, and I was like, "What are you guys doing here? You had to go home." They're like, "Well, they're in the semi-final, so like we thought we'd buy tickets. It cost us like $600, and we're staying, and you know, don't tell our wives, da 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 da." And then
said it on a podcast.
And then They were there during the grand final because they were like, but we're definitely going home after today. Like, we have to go. We have to go home. And then they were there in the grand final. I saw them in the arena and I was like, this is fucking sick. Like, obviously, when they're like, and the fact they win a map, like, imagine the hope that all the Mongolian fans, like all of Mongolia after map 1, Mongolia after map 1 must have been the sickest place in the world, man. Like, everyone just, they owned them. Like, it was really cool to watch that first map and 9-10 playing really well. But I think that confidence caught up with 9-10 throughout the series. You saw some of the plays that he was making that felt like if he had just defaulted back to his fundamentals, which is so hard to do when you're in your first ever major grand final, right? Like, and you're a young team. You're the youngest team in the playoffs. I'm not expecting them to play perfect Counter-Strike, but there's moments where you're like, well, if you've just done what you'd probably normally do, that's a round win, right? And that round win, does it break their money? Does it force a save? What does that mean for the overall game? But again, another learning. So yeah, I only have good things to say.
You could tell from the second map on, like once they did get in a position where, it was getting rough, you could tell like that was getting to them at some point, maybe at the beginning they thought like, okay, we could actually win this, and then I guess very quickly it was just kind of like the realization of, okay, this is the vitality that we expected,
Oh, for sure.
We didn't talk about ZywOo specifically.
He won 7 MVPs. What else do we need to say about the guy?
Second major MVP. Obviously, all of these things pretty good. Always new threads about the GOAT search bar on HLTV. I don't know even who put that in, to be honest. And now we're in a tricky situation because obvious reasons. I think you can say in many ways ZywOo has surpassed Simple, but Simple. It's kind of like when we talk about eras and everything. When you get to the end of CS:GO, you look back. I think it's obvious. Regardless, one thing that I don't agree with Moses about, like the CS:GO GOAT. I think it's obviously Simple, and at that point, But that's one snapshot in time where it's obvious. And now we're in an era where like it's not that obvious. You can depends on what you want to look at. If you want to look at CS2 only, well, Donk only has the only guy with a number 1. Then ZywOo has good stuff, but if you look at both, then it's one thing, then it's another thing. And it's tricky. I think the GOAT search bar, I think it should just put out Sponge.
Okay.
And I think if people agree with this, they can just write in chat.
I think that's a great idea.
In YouTube comments, they can agree with this.
All right, we'll get that change in there.
That's that. But I just wanted to say, like on Dust 2, you could feel the classic ZywOo moments in terms of it doesn't look like anything special, but he's just in the right place at the right time, making like a nice trade. There are a few rounds where things kind of got scary. A few players, maybe it was a force buy from MongolZ. A few players from Vitality are low. And you just see ZywOo get activated. He goes in front of someone to make sure that the low player, that guy doesn't die. Then he turns around, he gets the flank coming from long. I don't know, mezii makes a push. ZywOo is there. He just read it perfectly. He gets those 2 kills. Suddenly the round is like easy to call out. Just like, we group up, we finish B, easy round. But like if he doesn't get those 2 kills perfectly timed, things get complicated. And that's the ZywOo that people don't really appreciate, but I appreciate personally. I think it's nice to watch that. He's just so locked in so many of these rounds, and he makes it look easy, and that's it. He makes it look easy. So to the pleb, oftentimes it doesn't look exciting, but I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't know. ZywOo's a good player. What else do we have to say? For me,
he's kind of good.
He's kind of good. Okay, MOUZ. So for MOUZ, I wrote 0-2 Swiss to semis, 0-7 versus Vitality, second best team of the season ? Changes ?
Changes ?
Looking at striker ?
Striker ?
I mean, we can get into the change discussion. I guess we're going to do something more comprehensive on that, right?
So we're going to go through the rest of these playoff teams we're going to go over. I think are going to be like relatively quick, unless we have something to dig into, right? So
I mean, changes aside, I would say you can tell. I don't know whether it's down to the preparation because they were really not happy about the practice leading up to the major, and they were talking about learnings, but you could tell that the confidence wasn't so high like in MOUZ, and obviously they go 0-2 down. And they get into a position where they can lose 3 other times, and in that Liquid series, they barely made it out, right? And then in the Spirit series, that was also like they had to make the comeback on map 3. Like this could have been a lot worse of a showing that it was. And obviously that also speaks to their resilience and all of that stuff. Like they actually did, pull through in some of these moments, and that's something that maybe they wouldn't have in previous times. You can tell that that's part of their growth. I don't know whether there's much else to say, to be honest.
It's a hard one with MOUZ, I think, right? Because they are the second best team of the season. They've lost to Vitality in the semis. They've lost to them 7 times in this season.
Yeah.
What else can you really say?
They lost to them 7 times. These guys won 7 events.
Vibes. Yeah.
It's like liquid before they were good liquid vibes, Like they were constantly losing
liquid
to
in the Astralis era vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what do we think? Because, Prof, I made that tweet about the exertion thing. Because
which exertion thing? Sorry.
I tweeted it was something along the lines of, because I already spoke about this on Talking Counter. I just wanted to get your opinion.
Him being tense and stuff like that.
No, not being tense. I tweeted being like, when we don't get to hear the comms every round, but when we do, it's exertion calling the round openers, which, I went on to have conversation in some tweets with some people. It makes sense because he plays these really active positions on the C and the T sides, right? It makes sense for him to call the openings, but then my entire point with this is it's harder for Brolin to call into a game if his openings aren't working. And in the back and forth I had with Exertion on Twitter, he said, if I'm not getting the space and we're not getting the trades, then it makes it really hard for Brolin to be able to call the game. Yeah. I just don't know where they go. I don't know what they do. Do you just keep going?
I think I was watching them during the group stage a bit in person. First of all, insane comebacks that I think.
Good mental.
I want to mention this again because I thought they were out multiple times, and then teams that should have beaten them, Legacy, for example, Aurora, some degree, but Legacy for sure choked. They choked, but MOUZ also took advantage of that. You still need to play well, and you need to put pressure on them over time and keep yourself in it. I think a part of that was Torji, who was insanely vocal throughout the tournament and just a positive influence. But I think for Exertion, the more I look at this, he is literally just like a budget Nico in the good and the bad.
Okay.
In terms of the roles that he plays, the way that he plays, obviously super skilled player, likes to call his own shots, where he is positioned, makes sense that he is calling it. There's I don't know if you noticed, but this is the same thing you would say about G2 6 months ago with Snacks. This is literally the things that you said now about MOUZ, you have said about G2. It's if this player is not finding success and he is not able to call into rounds, then it goes to the de facto IGL, who kind of has to work, how would I say, kind of with ring rust almost. Then he needs to call when he's not in a way that he's not used to, and needs to call things that are kind of plan B, essentially. And the plan B is never going to be as good as plan A. And plan A is Nico / Exertion, go kill, and then, from a 5v4 or 4v4, we can win the round. But because, and also he is so stressed out all the time, and then Nico is as well. Whatever you want to say, they feel these rounds quite intensely, and you can see it on them. And when things go bad, I think they can have sometimes struggles to get back into games. Obviously, not saying Nico is a choker, but also had a shit game on the last game with Falcons here, and had some bad games in playoffs of majors in the past. So what I'm saying here is, I don't think it's criticism. I don't think it's something insanely negative. You're just a slightly worse version of one of the best players of all time. It's kind of a compliment in a way, but it's something that is hard to work around when if he's not playing well. I don't think there is really a solution to it. I think he just needs to be that guy for them to win tournaments.
But I think it could help inform maybe why they got rid of Shui. Because if you start to think about this, if Shui wanted to be the guy maybe taking some of those positions, because again, those are positions that if you look at other teams, that maybe Apex could be playing in certain rounds, right? And if Shui wanted to be well, no, you're not calling the round openings, I'm calling the game, right? You're going to do what I tell you to do in these round openings. And Exertion wanted to be, I'm purely speculating, I don't know, right? But if that's the way,
that does make sense to me. That does make sense to me.
So it's not meant as a bad thing. Again, second best team of the season, lost to Vitality 7 times. The eventual winners of the major, the best team of the year so far. Like, what else can you say? But then it's like, will they ever be good enough to beat Vitality? Probably. They'll probably beat them in a series, but are they going to be good enough to be like the best team? Do they have the potential to break through the glass ceiling?
That's such a crazy question to ask, like, against the Vitality that's like obviously has way more talent to work with and like all the right people, all the right positions. Let's say like they probably have the best players in 3 of their positions at the moment, you know, and it's like, of course, MOUZ are much more of a like win by committee sort of deal going on. Vitality just win by committee because their committee is full of stars. It's like everybody can turn games, and like part of that is true for MOUZ, of course. It's at the same time, but it's not to the same level, of course. You know, so it's like get rid of Vitality and then let's see how many games MOUZ win. You know, and I saw a lot of people said these things about Xerxen and also about torji being the emotional leader and Xerxen being kind of like the early round opener and like leader, and like people are using that against Brolin when. Like, I don't necessarily see a problem with that, you know? Like, not every team needs to have a super, like, vocal in-game leader or like one that micro calls everybody or like that makes all the calls all the time. I mean, again, even G2 of the past, you know, and like when Huxi was there, who is obviously much more of that, I'm sure loads of calls were being made by Nico and nobody had a problem with that. Of course, people had a problem with that because Huxi played like shit sometimes, but they weren't questioning him in terms of leadership so much in the same way that they would Brolin now, you know, even though I'm sure the same setup, you know, was the case for a lot of teams that had, you know, very capable in-game leaders. And it's also something that MOUZ said themselves, you know, that there would be more responsibility on Xerxen and torji now when they made this move, you know. So it was just an obvious progression or like an obvious way to solve the in-game leadership problem without having to put all the pressure on one guy. And I think that's great. I really don't see a problem with it. I think MOUZ did what they could with the pieces that they had or with the situation that they were presented with because, like, yeah, who do you get?
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
It's not that I disagree with what you just said there, but the thing that I just said, like, will they ever be able to beat Vitality? Sure. And you're like, well, no. But then you're like, yeah, but what they have is good. It's like, well, then, is it? Like, should they not have a recipe that's more similar
I did not say that they shouldn't make changes to try. I'm just saying, like, to put them in a position where they should be beating Vitality, or, like, to try to make an argument for how they should be beating Vitality. Like, nobody, like, at the moment, like, we have, like, one team that we can look at, or maybe, let's say, 2 teams that we can look at that can take series against them, and they haven't still, you know? And so it's the same as, like, how do you beat Astralis at that time, you know? Like, of course, some teams could, sometimes, but it was just very hard to do on a consistent basis. Like they just won one series against them, but they never won multiple tournaments against them. You know, it's just more like the position that Vitality are now in. It's very difficult to compete with them, and it's not like people can't. It's just very difficult for a team like MOUZ to get there consistently. You know, because they would probably take multiple changes.
But I guess that
do you disagree with that, Chad? Like, do you think MOUZ should make changes to like, because this is the question, like every change comes with a risk. And there are few like safe changes that you can make where you can find like a player that's very similar but just better. And that most likely will just make you better because everything else is a pretty big risk. And I honestly don't see a point in MOUZ changing any players, trying to chase an almost unreachable goal.
It's not obtainable, yeah.
Because like we're now literally, again, going back to what I said about this run, Astralis did not have this run. The only team that had this run was NIP.
Vitality. Oh yeah.
Vitality and NIP. Like these are the only teams. And now we're gonna be like, nah, you guys need to be better. Like how?
Yes.
No team between 2012 and 2025 was this good. And now I actually need to be better. Like that's a completely unreasonable bar of expectations to be set, for MOUZ particularly. I think for Falcons is not, because they have some of the best players and the money to get these best players in. I don't think MOUZ has, they don't have any top 5 player in the last 5 years in their lineup. Like who is their best player?
Probably ever, you mean? Probably.
I don't know. Torji could, if he is able, like he had some more missed games, but he's normally the guy that we look to where there's like the big output in the team.
I'm just saying historically, Exertion or Torji made top 20 first time last year. Spinks was top 10-ish somewhere, right? Not top 5, 6th, I think, was his highest. So like, yeah, they have some decent players, but unmatchable with
what Vitality have.
Vitality
Yeah.
and with what Falcons have. So for them to expect them to now suddenly be better than Vitality, I think it's for them more to maintain the level and wait for the opportunity to come and win some maybe smaller tournaments and wait for Vitality to slip up and at some point they'll not
pick up what's left, basically. Like
they will not
do that.
forever be sloppy seconds for MOUZ. That's it. That's the title.
Yeah.
I guess like they've already chosen their path in the Goosebumps book, though, right? They can't go back because the fact that they moved away from Shui means that they clearly want to go with the complexion of the game as it is right now. And then if you look at the pieces, what piece would you change, right? You're not taking out Torji, and if you've decided that Exertion's the guy who you want, who feels the game well enough to be calling the openings to these rounds, well, then you're sticking with those two. And then you need someone who is going to be an in-game leader who's happy for that to happen, right? So then that's why Brolin can fit into that. But Brolin, you could see in some of those games, was having a really rough time. Like, he was dying a lot first. Like, he was having some and some games, like, he was 0-8. Like, he was really having a hard time getting going. Jimmy's also had a drop-off.
I mean, that's incredible. Honestly, like, it is incredible that they got this far with how they looked and how many times that could have gone much worse. Like, basically every step of the way they could have lost earlier than they did. Like, it's the Liquid game, then it's Aurora, where they also went to map 3, Legacy, where they had to make that big comeback, then quarterfinal is Spirits again, where they had to make the comeback, and then fight through whatever it was, triple, quadruple overtime. Like, so many things led to this. Like, that this should not have been a result as good as that with how Torji played. He was bad from the beginning and never really recovered. He had like one good game against Vitality, in the semifinal, and that's about it. Like, for Torji's game, the whole
0.95 rating for the event is actually crazy because you feel like he did more. Yeah.
But we headed into it just feels like he did more because of the last two games rather than like, because in the groups we saw like he was really struggling, and the only game that he did something was Liquid, basically, and where he had that good Mirage that pretty much took it over the line, right? But then it felt better because the Vitality game, at least game 2, game 3 he was bad again, and that's kind of why he took it a lot on himself, right? That loss, and we saw in the interview afterwards how emotional he was about it. Like, it was a bad major for Torji overall. And that's like, it's insane to me, like, to think that, like, okay, if Torji had shown up, this might have even been better. They wouldn't have met Vitality. It could have gone to the final easily, and then maybe had a better chance against Vitality if he's just a bit better, than that. So because he's the guy who we usually say he's the one who doesn't choke, right? He's the one who we expect not to, but he had a quite rough games all throughout the tournament, So yeah, it's unfortunate, and I think honestly with how they look, I'm pretty sure they will be relatively happy with a semifinal finish at the major, especially considering they lost to Vitality and nobody else.
But it's more identifying why they were off. And you said, like, practice in the lead-in. For them, though, like, the biggest takeaway is, like, you're saying, well, the fact that they went so far, that was good because of how bad they looked.
Yeah.
For me, the biggest takeaway is how strong their mental was to make sure that they never gave up in any of those
100%.
games, because they could have just rolled over and died, but they chose to keep fighting back. And I think that's character-building wins. That's what I think is the best thing that they can take away from this major, because overall they did have a pretty good season. Like, Spinks only came in after Katowice because there was the whole bounty, then Katowice with, what was it, Zelex, and then Spinks came in after and they won Cluj. So, they could be in a much worse position. But anyway, Striker, looking at you again, are they making a change?
I think so. From what I was hearing before the tournament, right? And like, I'm not sure really, because everything obviously changes, but before the tournament, the vibe that I got was that they wouldn't change unless there was a good opportunity to. So let's say unless somebody like an obvious improvement would become available, let's say, then they would start looking at it. So I think for them it's more of a, let's scout the market, let's see what's available, and then let's see if there is an obvious upgrade that we can make. But at this point, like, who do you look at and think that you should upgrade? Is it Jimmy because he's had a rough season? Is it Brolin because you want a better in-game leader? Is it both, potentially, like, if you do find better upgrades? I don't think at the moment they are set on anything. I think during the next 3 weeks that might change. If, depending on what happens with Navi, let's say JL becomes available, like, is there a world where they incorporate him in some way, or maybe not JL because that's maybe not going to work, but whatever, Imad, let's say, that would be another one. Both maybe not in positions that they would like to upgrade, but who knows? I mean, with instead of Jimmy, JL, that could work out probably in some ways, right? So yeah, it's just I think that's that sort of a vibe. But for me, if I was MOUZ, and I know that was their kind of philosophy when they got this team, and when they found out that this team, like let's say a year ago, when they started putting together the academy core, right? At that point, they were like mega happy with just going far, winning every third, fourth tournament or whatever like that, and being competitive all the time. That was perfectly good for MOUZ, because their level of investment wasn't so high. They're always picking up pieces that are kind of left over, or they're bringing up new pieces from their academy and all that stuff. They're not, they're not the team that will just overspend every time just to be the best team in the world. I think they're pretty happy to be like, let's say, consistent top 4 with the team that they have. And so again, I would say for them, it's going to be more of a question of if there's a good opportunity to jump on, we'll do it. Otherwise, we're happy with what we have.
Fair enough. Do you think anybody would try and poach any of their players, or they're protected enough to?
I think at the moment they're pretty protected. We had that conversation last time. Obviously, Jimmy said no to Falcons. I am a bit worried. Like that's the one position that I'm a bit like iffy about. Like just as a looking at his season, right? Like he had a bit of a better lead up to the major again, but then at the major itself, there wasn't really anything special. So it's curious about like how they look at Jimmy's season and whether they think it's something that he can come back from. Because I mean, it is a bad season, right? I mean, we've seen that from other people.
But Spinks and Exertion take up so much room.
Yeah,
like. But the complexion of the team before it wasn't like that.
The positions didn't change that much, right? Like
it's not about the positions. Yeah. It's the way that the player plays the position.
Okay.
It's the impact that the way Spinks plays his position that then has an impact on the way that Jimmy can play his.
Yeah, sure.
It's not like a 1-for-1 in terms of you can't get the same output. Like there's a push and pull in Counter-Strike, and the biggest problem that Vitality had with Spinks is that they thought he was too baity or too aggressive in certain situations and giving it. So, like, if Jimmy's having to make up for that, right, and it's some of the same problems, it looks good in the ratings for Spinks. It looks good in the ratings for Exertion. It looks bad in the ratings for Jimmy. Yeah. Do we think Jimmy's just started to be bad for no reason?
No, right. But
there has to be a correlation.
I'm not saying that Jimmy is a bad player or that he's not going to recover from this in another team, if he does get an opportunity to go somewhere else, if they do end up considering replacing him. No, it's not about that. It's about how he's looking in this season and this composition, right? It's pretty clear that he's not having the same level of impact. So I would be like, if I was looking at one guy to potentially replace, it would be him for somebody who can take more of these passive positions, who is not going to have so much room to play, right?
This is the thing, right? I think that there needs to be more parity. Obviously, certain players are in positions that do more, but I think that even on the micro, in terms of like map control or making sure you leave the door open for your teammates to be able to rotate, I think there needs to be more resources spread more evenly. Not one player or two players can shovel shit for everybody else, because then they'll never get an opportunity to actually play. And to always be a passive player or to never get any resources in any of your positions. I'm not saying this is happening with this team. I'm just saying this can't happen in any team that wants to be good. There needs to be more. Players need moves. Players need support in certain areas. No, you can't all just be shoveling like shit and have just set up a couple of guys. It's not going to work. It's just not going to work. All right. Let's keep jumping around because we've been going for ages already. So I don't know how long you boys want to stay doing this for, but I wanted to
maybe
get
like 20 minutes
teams.
more.
All right, so let's try and fly through some of these playoff teams. Pain. So I wrote down best Brazilian team ? NQZ growth as a player. Like before, there was the conversation about who's the best Brazilian AWPer. Now it's NQZ without a doubt.
Yeah, I think this major has shown it pretty clearly.
He was very good. He was consistent. He was great with the openers. He, was
the clutches as well. Like so many of these clutches. Not that he was clutching specifically, but a lot of these 2v3s. Like there was so many rounds where he had so much impact, where he was taking so much pressure, and like it was really great. I liked him a lot.
I just kept recounting in the cast that I did all the issues that they had because I didn't feel like it was getting enough spotlight because it was such a disappointing season for the team based off of all the things that had happened, right? Obviously, Lux went out after the Shanghai Major. They started the season with Cowes. They looked for a replacement for Cowes. They brought in Demo, the kid from the academy. Rix had to stand in a couple occasions. Biggie Zero had glue ear. DGT had visa issues. They didn't get a lot. Davides had only joined this year. Obviously, the language barrier, but you got Portuguese and you got Spanish. So there's a few factors that would play in there, but I think they salvaged their season. And did they do better than they're probably worth? Yes, I think they're edging it. Like considering the field, considering we lost Falcons early, considering we didn't get Aurora there for Pain to be in the top 8. Great, the fact that they got against FURIA in the quarterfinal, that meant that one of those two teams was always going to overperform past that point. It's not meant to be like a dig at Pain or anything. I like the team, but you do have some issues. Like Snow would be the one like who he actually is pretty weak, I think, overall. I don't know if he can find growth in his positions, because even just in a position okay, he just needs one, right? All you need to know is one. Like it's not glamorous. You're just smoking off tunnels and you're hoping you get a kill here, but it's like you need one, or your team doesn't win the round. That's probably where I think that the next thing has to come in. Like, how do
but
they
I think
get more
everybody
out of
else,
Snow?
like if you look at it, like everybody found their impact like at certain points, right? Davido's had a lot of clutches during the major. Like obviously there was that one game, I can't remember which one, then he had like 5. Was it the VP one? I can't recall now. Or an Amiga, maybe. Anyway,
They
but
played
like
VP twice.
I
Could have
think
been
it
the
was
second VP outing.
I think it might have been that. I'm not sure now. It doesn't matter. But like I remember having a lot of clutches. He was ending up in a lot of clutches that like he had a legit chance of winning, and he did. And then QZ obviously stepped up a lot, but DGT also kind of is starting to find his form on this team, at least in some of those games. And then everybody, I feel like they are at least starting to find the like what we were expecting from Pain once they got DGT right, because they were much lower than we would have expected. They just kept bombing out after the change, and I mean that's why I kind of predicted them to do well at the major. I mean we put them in the pick'ems for the playoffs mainly because they were like the team left over or anything like that. But I still thought that there was a performance like this bound for them, at some point. Of course, they had a relatively easy run or like a kind of a lucky draw in a lot of those paces. I mean, but they still proved they're best of the rest, right? They played some of these teams that were just on the fringes, like VP, like, let's say FURIA now, because they've started proving that they're there. 3D Max is another team that they played. Like all these teams that we see like as like the brink of top 10, they beat all of them, right? And that's how they got their semifinals. And I think that's pretty much exactly where we would expect to be Pain to be, right? Like on the fringes of top 10.
Yeah.
And being able to beat these teams and then maybe sometimes competing with the ones above, but not overperforming against those, So I think this was more like the reversion to the mean for Pain rather than anything else.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Prof, you got anything here? You want to keep moving?
Yeah, I mean, we can keep it going. I think I just agree. It's just nice to see them bounce back, and what you mentioned about all of the circumstances and factors about the lineup going into tournaments before the major, like it was, I don't want to say it was expected. It was expected for them to be better than that, for sure. Like how good, I don't know, but this is, as you said, this is probably a bit higher than what we expect in the second part of the season, but I expect them to be there, as you said, fighting for playoffs, maybe semis and smaller events, depending how bracket works and stuff like that, because they picked up quite a few good players, and kind of it makes sense. Like the roster makes sense. I do also agree on Snow maybe being a guy that needs to find a bit more. Even when Cow is on the lineup, Cow was like really struggling, but always thought Snow was not really finding that much impact on the server as he could. He's still super young, obviously, so that could also change over time.
For sure. Okay, next one I had was Spirit. So the reigning champs, obviously eliminated by MOUZ there in the quarterfinals. We already talked about it, but that was, for me, the best game of the playoffs. Mirage was lots of fun with all the clutches, like the Zontic clutch, the Magic clutch. Yeah. Like I really enjoyed that game. That was probably my favorite map of the playoffs, I guess, overall. But this leads us to the same question, and this is where because remember, the trolls yearn for the rumor mills. So we got to bring them in here. Conversation about this team making a change. Obviously, Kiyosuke's been officially announced on Falcons. Magis has been benched. So that option isn't there anymore. But we all knew that was going to happen, right? This is just the confirmation of that. Yeah. But there's rumors starting to fly around about, 1 change, 2 change, Overdrive coming out, because people are saying, well, Perfecto's joining, and then Overdrive's like, that's not fucking happening. Yeah, so where are we with Spirit?
Okay. I don't know where the fuck that rumor with Perfecto from Carol came from. Like, Perfecto just posted like a mega desperate tweet on Telegram asking like for any opportunity out there as possible, and you're like, yeah, he's joining Spirit. Like, how does that compute to anybody? Like, is Perfecto just trolling, like trying to get a better deal out of Spirit, or what's the like?
You never know. What's the logic? He's a businessman.
What's the logic here? Like, I just don't really. Like I would question whoever would bring me that rumor, instantly, because it just doesn't compute. But I think the positions that Spirit would be potentially looking at improving would be like obviously Zontix or Magix, right? We've had this conversation for a couple of times. And I do think there's got to be a change coming. And like from what I'm like, we're hearing that there's a lot of rumbling around Spirit. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was like, as a way, let's say, like that's such a good fit. Or if somehow Heroic let him go, it's Tanir, like it's like instead of Zontix or Magix or both, potentially if they can get upgrades for both of them, potentially it's just going to be one, right? But like, who else could you even replace if you're Spirit, right? Like, there's no like proven in-game leader other than
people
like,
always
Boomich.
go say Boomich, right?
That's what I'm
people
saying. Like,
go
that's
with
like
the
the
in-game
only
leader
guy
angle.
that you would consider. And I don't know if after Cloud9 and after all these kind of fumbles, I'm not sure that people have so much belief in Boomich and it's going to be better.
Then Chopper,
Chopper, right?
Yeah.
Shiro, mezii was the only replacement that you would ever consider, and that's never happening. So that's not happening, and you're obviously not replacing Dong. So there's only two pieces left to upgrade, and that's those two. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if. I mean, I think one is guaranteed pretty much. I wouldn't be surprised if both.
ZywOo was really good, I thought, on Namiga. I think in the positions that he was playing, he was always willing to take a fight and quite active, which is what I was saying, similar to a ropz, right? So if ZywOo is able to play in that system and he's still able to make those type of moves, he doesn't just have to be idle and sit and just hold territory. Like, he actually gets to try and make plays to add other openings on the extremities of the map. That'd be fun. Because he was definitely like he could be in the same like breakout position as like a flameZ from like last major, right, with Gamer Legion. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind a ZywOo addition, but are you going to replace Boros or are you going to replace Zontix, right? So that in itself starts to become a different question. So I don't know, who, and if you go for both, right? Like you mentioned Tanir, but you bring Tanir into that team, he's a bit more of an aggressive player profile, which the team
that could be instead of
use.
Zontix, right? I mean, Zontix does have some of these more active positions, that
That's
he
true.
can play with, like let's say CT Canada, he's playing short, right? So
Yeah.
so like one of these positions, he is definitely the more aggressive of those two. So if you did bring Tanir, it would be probably instead of him, and then ZywOo instead of Magix, if it was both. I don't know.
Wouldn't it fuck Heroic though if they let go of Tanir?
Yeah, they would be fucked. They would definitely be fucked. They would lose the core again.
Because
they would have to rebuild again.
they have LNZ Youngster and Tanir left because
Yeah,
Supplies is gone and they got rid of
They already
X-Flap.
benched X-Flood, so yeah, that's the interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
Dear. Okay. Well,
That surprised me. Like I don't know if that suggests something or what, but I didn't expect two changes to come out of Heroic, to be honest.
yeah, me too. I don't know where they're going to go from here. You need an AWPer and you need a rifler.
I mean,
So that's
Opera,
tough.
yeah, there's options, I think, in terms of
Yeah.
like coming up. I mean, you have Grix, would be one of those.
That's right.
Like,
That's
a big one.
been heavily discussed, hasn't it?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
I guess is
I think
probably
that's
one
been
of those.
that's also been there's been a report about that as well, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So, Prof, do you think that these changes with Spirit will happen, or do you think it's all just talk?
I think one, as he said, one for sure. Like, there's no way they survive with this 5-man lineup. I think obviously you have. I mean, we spoke about it before. Vitality, Falcons should be challenging. I think Spirit should be challenging because they also have a generational talent, right? In Donk, this is not something. If you have a player like this, you should be challenging for titles. This is a luxury that MOUZ doesn't have, for example. So, and they have also Shiro, pretty good player, I would say. And they kind of owe it to the players to make the most of it. So I do think they need to change.
I want to throw this on you, Prof, right now, because there was some conversation today, rumors, more Overdrive stuff about Flit and Fame not wanting to stay in VP, or at least Flit not wanting to stay, and then conversation about them going to Parivision. But like, if you could get one of those two players on Spirit, would you?
I
Do you
think
think
Flit is a
they're a
good
worthy pickup?
consideration. Would require maybe a bit of role swapping
Adjustment,
around,
yeah.
but I think. I mean, this is also the conversation, the whole Kiyosuke conversation. There's the kind of the sentiment that they don't want him, but from more recent talks, it seems like they did want him, but he just didn't want to stay. He wanted to go to Falcons.
Well, he's going to get a lot more money on Falcons.
Yeah, but it seems, at least from what I heard, it was more about the opportunity to play with Nico and mezii than anything else. Like, he's also a young guy, and I don't know the whole story, but it seems like he was convinced this was the move for him, essentially, more so than staying on Spirit. So essentially, what I'm trying to get at there is they were open to have another aggressive rotation player on the lineup. So how they make that work, Would it be Chopper? Would it be, him moving around? Would it be more of like Zontics and maybe other, changes happening? I think someone like Flit could be a pretty decent option. I don't think Fame has been that good, honestly, in a long time. So I don't think he has more. I don't think he should be put in the conversation. I don't think he deserves it right now. No disrespect to him as a player. Just I don't think if you have someone like Zontics and Magix who have been, had their ups and downs, but have consistently helped Spirit win trophies over the last year, I don't think Fame has anything to say in that conversation. But I think Flit historically, and even in the last year, some tournaments bad, but I had some really good moments overall. I think he's been pretty consistently a good piece for VP. So I think it would be interesting. I do think the Tanir and Zwei ones are more natural fits. Like if you're not already getting Kiyosuke, who's free from your academy and could be another like insane talent, right? We don't really know, but their potential is there. I think it makes more sense to go with pieces that fit more naturally, but I'm not against the Flit idea completely either.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about Spirit, gentlemen, before we move on? Obviously, they played the best game of the playoffs. They did lose it, but it was to MOUZ.
Thanks for the entertainment, I guess.
Yeah, I do think that considering how MOUZ looked during the tournament, I think that's a fairly bad look for Spirit.
Okay, that's a good framing.
End up beating them. I think I'm sure they wanted to be the ones who take down Vitality, and so to stop at Spirit, especially to stop at MOUZ, especially the MOUZ that we saw in Austin, I think is a pretty big disappointment. Because you guys were pretty big on Spirit after the group stage. I wasn't so much. It was mainly based on the Navi game, but still, like I would have still expected them to do more based on that, especially against the MOUZ. So yeah.
I watched the vlog they put out after their match, so I recommend everyone always goes look at that content that they put out there because you get some nice nuggets, like Hallie having to go at Chopper and Donk also copping a little bit from Hallie. So did I say Donk having to go at Chopper?
No, I
meant
Hallie.
to say Hallie.
Hallie.
Yeah, he had some things to say, so I thought it was pretty nice. It's great to see the bit more candid side of things there.
I did see Chopper after the loss in the hotel lobby. He looked very, very disappointed. I'll just say that.
Well, fair enough. You just lost in the quarterfinals of a major. I'd be pretty disappointed too.
Yeah, this memory of him with a beer, just like on the table, like almost like how dogs lay down. That's kind of how he was. He was out of it.
It's got a sad look to it there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Jumping around. FURIA. Does YEKINDAR stay?
Oh, I don't see a reason why he wouldn't. To be honest, like at this point,
is it fool's gold though?
You could make that argument. You could make that argument for sure, considering like this is kind of how it started in Liquid as well. But I think. But what else can you hope for, right? What is fool's gold so bad? It's better than dirt.
True. I'm just I have no horse in any race. I'm not racing. I'm just a watcher of the races with the horses. So this horse.
Do you have any bets on the horses? Or?
No bets on the horses. Betting on the horses is illegal. No betting on the horses.
I mean, depends on where you are. But
where I am in the watching box, they say no betting on the horses.
Okay. So ultimately,
he's on Liquid.
He helped them. He helped them a lot.
He did. He played very well.
Do you think he's going to go back to Liquid? The Liquids wants him back.
I don't think so.
Anyone think so? Striker, you think so?
Unless Nerds is going somewhere.
I don't see it.
Yeah, that would be an interesting move. Also, but I don't think that's going to happen either.
I mean, I guess it is like one of those situations, where FURIA didn't want to commit to anything long term. Maybe he was also like, yeah, okay, let's see if this works. And if then that's like this is the perfect place to be if you're YEKINDAR, to be honest, like because you've just kind of proven to your temporary team that okay, I'm worth keeping, but also you've shown so much that you're not done as a player in terms of individual prowess, right? Because he obviously had a much better performance in this major and in this run than he would with Liquid before that, where his stock was really super low. So he recovered his stock. He probably gave FURIA a really good reason to actually sign him on a permanent deal. So he actually does have like some safety, I would imagine. I just don't know why FURIA wouldn't, to be honest. Like with how they looked, making it to major playoffs, and before that was Astana, right, where they did really well. So like I don't really see a reason why you would like risk something else when this seems to be okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Like for me, even though they made it to the playoffs and you had better output overall, I wonder about the long-term prospects of this team because it's essentially just going to be an international roster going forward. At least that's how I see it, right?
That's going to be either way. I mean, Moldo is not learning Portuguese, I would imagine. So
yeah, so
so you might as well stick to it.
Is exactly. So the whole framing of the roster is going to change going forward. So it's hard to kind of predict what's going to happen. I think that they definitely performed very well. They played some good Counter-Strike. And another one of these like Hail Mary roster change attempts because there's a few teams who did it, right? FaZe, FURIA, and then they made the playoffs. So their gambits worked. And it's hard to fuck with the results. It's just about, is that the long-term direction that the team wants to go? So that's kind of the only question I get left with there. That does take us to FaZe. So they rode the ambulance in and out of the playoffs, did old FaZe clan. The big question here is, does Simple stay or is there going to be a whole different look? So Carrigan in the interview, like there was a whole bunch of interviews. People asked Simple, would you stay? And he was like, well, if they offer, why wouldn't I? Carrigan going to have to talk to management. What do we think about FaZe? Has them getting to the playoffs just resuscitated what was already looking like a team that was fucked? Should they restart the project? Where do you go? What pieces do you keep? Like this FaZe and NAVI, I feel, are in really similar points, but with completely different problems.
Unfortunately, I feel like I've learned nothing
about FaZe. We didn't learn anything. They made the Hail Mary. That worked. They made it to the playoffs, but that was it. Like Striker knows so much. Tell us, Striker. Is Brokey coming back?
Honestly,
Striker?
Like I'm not even sure what options FaZe have, to be honest, because like long term, I don't think they have the sort of money to buy out some big players. And so is it going to be like, are you going to get Dexter or are you just bringing Brokey back and get some other, like make some other changes?
So you don't think they can buy Simple? Or you don't think they want to buy Simple?
I think they first of all, I don't think they can. Yeah, I just don't believe they can, to be honest. And I wonder, like this whole situation is weird, and I actually don't know for sure like what's going on with the whole NAVI loan and like what his contract situation is like and all that stuff. Like I'm not super in depth on that. But it is almost like, NAVI wouldn't want to let him go on a permanent deal in case he shows that he can still be as good as before, and then bring him back instead of Wonderful. Even if you want to bring him back as a rifle, like we were talking about it early in CS2 when Ima was doing badly, right? Like, yeah, just bring him Wonderful and get Simple in Ima's spots, And like, so I wonder like if this whole temporary deal or like if this test that FaZe was also for NAVI and looking at the potential of like bringing Simple back into the lineup, like also coming from like the comments that came around it, Simple was very, very vague about his future. Then Kerrigan was very vague about the future, and then suddenly he says, no, FaZe actually doesn't have the money. Effectively, he said he would talk to the management, but before that he was like, yeah, Simple is very expensive and NAVI knows that he should be very expensive and blah blah blah. Like it very clearly showed that they weren't going to continue with him. To me, I don't know that from anywhere behind the scenes, but so that's why I'm kind of like just contemplating out loud like what's actually what's a good option for FaZe at this point, because it's very hard to see for me.
Feels like you have to either fully, like when I say fully rebuild, you have to keep 3 because of the VRS. But then I always have a hard time saying which 3 you should keep.
That's the thing, right?
I mean, Simple resuscitated a bit of the excitement, but then if you just go back to having Brokey in the team, then you made no movement, you made no ground, you're back where you were. You're gonna have the same problems that you had.
I simply don't feel like Brokey has a future in this team. I don't think that's a realistic.
But what if they made other changes? What if Brokey came back, but then they replaced like, I don't know, 2 other players?
But I don't.
But for whom is my problem? Is like,
who
do you get that's available?
I don't think that's like I don't agree with this whole like, oh, Elige came in, therefore Brokey is bad. Like I don't think that's an excuse that I'm subscribing to at all. I think it was just on him. So I don't see even that move like, oh, let's replace Elige and bring in Twist, I don't know, whatever. So that's going to bring some like unspecified magic back to Brokey's play. I think he just needs to go somewhere else and play and, get back on the horse as it happens with a lot of players,
But then you need an all-proof your face.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Honestly, like that's my biggest problem. Like, yeah, okay, Brokey coming back feels bad considering where they were with him. But like, do you get Dexter, who is kind of at the moment, who is also a very like uncertain element, in a team? Like, of course, we knew the potential before he was in Falcons. That didn't really transpire, you know, that he had that one tournament. Like, do we believe that's the Dexter that we can expect moving forward? Like, and is that better than Brokey if Brokey comes back to reasonable form? Like, for Brokey, it was also just one bad season, right? Like, he still had, well, let's say 1.5. He also had a pretty bad end to last year as well. So it's not like Brokey's done as a player to me, you know, at least. And so it's just, I just fail to see what other options they have and whether it's going to depend on like who Navi replace, for example, you know. So you could definitely see like an Imag going to FaZe, let's say, you know, or like, let's say Imag JL.
Could
like
you see Imag going to FaZe?
I would say JL before Ima, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know. Are they FaZe caliber players?
JL loves a bit of content.
How do FaZe have no options? What happened? The
They
world's
don't have
upside
money.
down.
They don't have that much money. That's why.
Do you want to hear an interesting concept for FaZe?
Yeah, hit me.
Affordable, in form, off the radar,
All right.
European,
Keep going.
Opper, Halzerk.
I don't hate it. I honestly, like, the worst part is I don't hate it.
Do you think that they could buy him?
He's in complexity, bro. Of course they could buy him.
But didn't he just resign?
Oh, that's...
He's in
let's see.
complexity. He's in complexity.
What did it, do we have a... I'm sure we don't have a deal. Complexity don't like to say anything that they don't have to.
Okay, because Halzerk, when he's on form, is very good.
He's been really good this year. Grim
Yes,
said
he has.
he's a top 20 player.
Yeah, Grim would
Oh,
say
he
that.
resigned like a year and a half ago. Or when is it? When is this? No, a year ago now.
Okay, so it's probably a
He may be-
3-year deal.
Probably a 3-year deal, maybe 2-year
I don't know if
deal.
Complexity do 3. Probably would imagine 2.
But even if it's 2, like, it's still complexity. We know that they're not like super rich, right? So they would getting a good bump of cash could be.
How old is Halzerk?
Well, that's a great question.
24?
23. Pretty young.
So,
Pretty
he's
young.
so young. He's so young.
So not a bad shout, really, but it can't just be Halzerk. And now he has to play with the Liege again.
He has to. I like how you phrased that.
I don't know. I think.
Why did we get on this train that Elise is just a piece of shit?
That's
where
just
did
Chad.
where did
That's
that
just
happen?
Chad. I do not subscribe to this.
I don't
Chad's
think that
a
either.
wonderful
I just-
human
that.
being.
Okay.
I just think he doesn't work in FaZe. That's all.
Fair enough.
People are like, yeah, but he plays well. Yeah, but FaZe aren't very good. So I don't know what you guys want. Like,
Yeah.
what are we talking about here? There has to be
Can't
some
blame
problems.
that just on him.
I'm not. There's
Honestly,
more to it.
Halzerk might be in a pretty good spot at the moment. Yeah, that's true.
Damn. Okay. Well, there, Prof solved it. Halzerk to FaZe.
Maybe there's like some,
2 Norwegians.
We're all wrong though. We all thought Simple was back. He's not back, is he?
you know, there's that
Yeah.
deferring payment from Complexity to Game Square. You know, maybe that's like Halzerk is going to be part of that
write-off.
deferring, like a write-off on the buyout of Complexity from Game Square.
But yeah, Simple's quarterfinal against MongolZ, pretty bad.
He was. I've never seen him
was-
so like after a game, just
Man,
so like devastated.
That
Man.
was
he was
such a
out of it.
disappointment, man. Especially after
Yeah.
the groups. Like, yeah, he wasn't like fucking blowing everybody out of the water, but he was good. He was good
Yeah.
in groups, and then just nothing in the playoffs. It was so rough.
Yeah, it's a shame. And now you have to wonder what comes next because if FaZe can't buy him or won't buy him, we'll go with can't. And then Navi, right, still have him under contract. But if he goes, like, does he even want to play with those guys at Navi? Like, do they even want to play with him after the way that it all kind of fell apart back in 2023? So,
I mean, it's a different
I mean-
time, right? It's a different, probably somewhat different Simple at this point who understands that, you know, there's boundaries, let's say. But yeah, also like if you, let's say you replace him as well, like he was the one struggling with Simple the most, right? And you could tell that was affecting him. So like that could be like a double change or whatever if there's a world. Like I still think FaZe is by far the best option for Simple long term. Like I really do, but I want that to happen. I just don't think it will.
yeah,
Because
no.
who else do you see be able to handle him and be able to channel that than Kerrigan, you know, like then FaZe. Like I just don't see any other good option for Simple at this point. So I really truly hope that it happens because I just want to see more of this and I want to see how far he can take it. and in a team that like where he can channel that, and like that's the only place. I
agree.
I would hate the most. I would hate the
agree.
most if he just goes back on the bench and we don't see him for another season.
I would too. I want him back in the server. I just hope that it can happen. Because there's so many things that could get in the way of it happening.
Yeah.
And
He just knows that like a motivated Simple, like a Simple who really wants to win, like he still has it. He still has it, and he will get better even. Just like he had a few months to do this, and like he already showed a lot. Yeah, playoffs, the one quarterfinal was shit, but otherwise he was good. He was good.
I don't know. I think he should. Yeah, I agree. Like, I'm looking at the teams. There's nowhere else for him to go. Like, there are other teams like G2 just sign someone else to op. Like, he's not going to get on
They also
MOUZ.
said that they wouldn't pick him up anyway. So.
Stuff like that is not going to happen. So I don't know what the point of NAVI keeping him is. Like, I don't think he'll be back on that lineup. I don't think that it's just, even though they need some changes for sure, him coming on just changes the setup of the team, I think, way too much. In a way where like everything they've been building kind of goes out of the window to some degree. So I don't think it makes sense. So yeah, I just hope they can find an agreement between each other. Maybe the thing about FaZe not paying him is that's a part of the Kerrigan bluff. Maybe it's like trying to lower the price a bit.
Sure.
But, we know he does a good interview, this is not a veto one, this is a buyout one, but might be down the same route. I was talking to some FaZe people during the event, and it was a funny thing. It's the whole thing, but no one knows who's doing what in FaZe and like who's signing a player, who's in charge of the roster. Apparently, they're very happy with that being that way. So they'll continue, and we'll never know what the fuck is going on. And
wait. They're happy that we don't know?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, fine. That's fine. That's cool. All right, I'm happy with that. Whatever. This brings us to NAVI, then, I guess. So the things I wrote down for NAVI was par for the course, lost the eventual winners, didn't take a map, could have beaten most teams in the other side of the bracket.
Potentially, I guess, yeah.
I think they could have.
Yeah, didn't really see too much of them, to be honest. It's a weird tournament for Navi. Like, I don't really feel like what could we. But
that's why I
they
led
played
with par
5
for the course.
games. Yeah, that's yeah.
They made it to the playoffs, okay, but we know the team needs roster change because Navi's not the type of organization where top 8 is good enough. They're meant to be one of the elite level Counter-Strike teams in the world, and they're not right now, right? So, like, we knew that changes were going to happen because they're not in that position where they should be. Yeah. But this is where so there's been some conversation around them as well, because we may as well just get straight into the fucking roster talk. That's what people care about. People don't give a fuck that they didn't make it past Vitality in the quarterfinal. But there was rumors that the Academy roster was going to get picked up by Cloud9. Then Jack came out on Twitter to say, no, that's not happening. So we've had like rumors floating around that have been refuted.
I will say that like the fact that they were looking to sell the junior team is true. Just apparently not to Cloud9. Like they were looking out for buyers for sure.
Okay. Well, it's interesting, right? Because their junior team has been quite successful.
I mean, that's the reason, right? Like, I mean, you just don't want to hinder their progress, right? Because it is actually a team that would be competitive on the tier 2, but they just will never get a chance to play in the tier 1 because there's the main team there, right? And they will never be allowed to do that. So
I mean, they can play. They almost qualified for, was it Bucharest? I think they're one of these, not almost qualified, but they're pretty deep in the qualifier.
Weren't they in the final or something? One of these qualifiers? Am I crazy?
I think not the final, but like semi or something for Bucharest. Yeah.
But the overall point of this is, that they're a good roster within themselves. But should Navi poach from should they promote? Sorry, that's the term I should have used, and use some of those players in their main team, or do they not think that that's the way to finding success? Do they think that they can, go for bigger names across the Counter-Strike sphere? And I feel like that's the angle they're going to go for, as opposed to promoting players. I'm not basing that off any actual knowledge. I'm just taking a stab in the dark here, so I don't know.
I think. I'll just put a general statement and then you can go into details. But I think, unlike FaZe, they have so many options. They can literally change half of the roster, and there's many different pieces that could be not even necessarily like, oh, this is an obvious upgrade, but just a change that can upgrade the team, essentially. Because I think they need a shake-up more than they need a specific player. For the mental side of things. Yeah, they've just been together. They've reached
like a fresh coat of paint.
They've reached some obviously had great success last year, Team of the Year. I don't know why people are saying, in my opinion, team of the year. Like in whose opinion were they not team of the year? Find me one person who's going to challenge that opinion. Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, yeah. So I just think they need to shake up more so than they need like, this guy needs to necessarily be upgraded because he is hindering the lineup.
I mean, that's what Blade was saying as well in like the interview afterwards, where it's like, even if like the headline was, even if we do end up replacing somebody, it's not because he was bad. It's not because he let the team down, because it is like that. I mean, you had Wonderful had off games, Ima had off games, Jail had off games in tournaments, and like all of them had moments where you were like, okay, if this continues, he's going to be replaced. But then he has a good tournament. Another guy doesn't really do that well, and they just keep taking turns where you're like, so what is the solution? You don't even know. You just feel like, some fresh blood would just fix it. Kind of automatically, almost like you just change up a few positions and like you get a new guy in and all that stuff, and that's just gonna make everything better. Everybody's gonna get reinvigorated, and I think, I mean, if they don't promote mezii now, like when else? If they're gonna have to end up selling him, like that's their only opportunity at this point to promote him. And I feel like unless they somehow get a better option out there, which there might be some other changes that we don't know about, or they just buy somebody out. Navi are pretty rich org, like they can throw money around. They just bought a fucking LEC slot that's worth a lot of money, and so like it's not like that's the only option. But having somebody ingrown, knowing him from the academy, having worked with him from the additional staff that Navi have, all this stuff that I feel like would be so beneficial, it just makes it such an obvious move. And it would also put them in a position where they would have a guy where they don't have to do this committee thing where they have a lot of different players playing a lot of different spots, sharing a lot of the entering, for example, sharing a lot of the opening. mezii is super aggressive. Like, he just goes for a lot of openings. He goes for a lot of these. He's the first guy running in. He's like the very, not an old school entry or anything like that, but he's just that aggressive that he just wants to go in first all the time. And so if Navi has that guy who can also perform in those positions, then can maybe unlock the rest of the team. I'm saying unfortunately, I guess that would mean Ima would have to go out because he's probably the closest to those positions, and then like that could be it. That could be the only change that Navi make this entire season. I guess you could also look at JL is probably the other one that people would look at the moment, because I like, as much as I don't think Wonderful's been like the most amazing opera, I just don't think there's really that many options for anybody
unless they bring back Simple.
Yeah, unless they bring back Simple, that's the one that I'm kind of
you reckon Simple's going to play with
wondering about.
I reckon Simple's going to play with a bunch of kids from the academy roster, right? Like, what are we talking about, bro?
Or they sell the academy roster and then buy Jambo.
Jambo, fucking hell, Jesus!
Jambo went to Fnatic and you haven't heard of him.
Exactly. Yeah.
What a great time. Well, they beat an IP or something, I think.
That's great.
At the fake DreamHack glitched. Maybe we call it here. Do we have anything else that needs
last
to be
one would be G2, which is Hunter rumored to be taking over the in-game leadership over there.
I mean, we can also talk about this in the next episodes. But
sure, but you know what people are going to be like, Prof?
We always talk about G2.
If
they want to hear about G2, they can go into any episode except this one and listen to it. But
all right.
I don't think this is like news. This is something that we kind of speculated might happen anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we did talk about Hunter being an in-game leader, but potentially picking up. All right, let's be done. Like I said, when we kick the episode off, that we can do some depending on what you guys' holidays or whatever look like.
And don't close the browser until we
need to let it upload. So thanks to the sponsors, Skin Place, as well as Anthros. I'm sitting in my chair right now. It's very comfortable. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of HLTV Confirmed, not live, special edition.
Sell in-game items at the best prices in just a couple of clicks. We are the biggest instant sell service for in-game items like Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and Rust. Easy selling process and instant withdrawal of funds to the most popular payment methods. More than 140,000 deals and 50,000 active sellers every month. Use promo code HLTV5 and get a 5% bonus on the sale of your skins. Skin Place. Sell items now.
When every move counts, your chair shouldn't hold you back. Top esports players are switching to Anthros for unbeatable support and performance that keeps them in the game longer. Designed to support your unique shape and built with medical-grade components, Anthros is setting a new standard for comfort. Check out the Anthros difference today and get ready to fix your sit, because gaming deserves more than just a chair.